St. Tammany Parish Government's Coop Complex, Monday, April 12th, for St. Tammany Parish Tammany Utilities meeting. Madam, I'm going to call you the clerk today.
Yeah.
You can call the roll for me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Dean? Mr. Lorino?
Here?
Mr. Davis? Here. Mr. Canulet? Here. Mr. Smith? Mr. Bender? Here. Mr. Canulet, your seat's over here tonight.
Mr. Canulet, if you would have arrived on time, you would have saw your name in the proper location over there.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Before we get started, I just want to make a couple of comments in general. Anyone wishing to speak on this topic, for or against, please fill out a card and put it in. Anyone that puts in a card will be allowed 3 minutes to speak on the topic. I have two gentlemen, I believe. What I like to do, especially when there's a lot of people on one subject, that we have a couple of people speak and they kind of cover what the opinions are, what the concerns are of the area being affected. It works very good at appeal meetings. And so what I'm going to allow is, normally that's a 5-minute, but I'm going to give 7 minutes to these two gentlemen to talk on the subject, and then when anybody else will come up can talk about it, but they'll have 3 minutes. And just so everyone knows, this Tammany Utilities meeting was not called for this issue going on at Cross Gates. This Tammany Utility meeting was called a month ago, and it just had this issue happen, and we are able to address the ongoing progress of Tammany Utilities parish-wide, and then the issue of Cross Gates. So we get to accomplish two different things. But I just want everyone to understand that this meeting was not called for this one specific purpose. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go to Mr. Tim Brown, who's the head of Tammany Utilities, to make his presentation on what we were originally calling this meeting on, was an update of Tammany Utilities since our last meeting prior to the COVID-19. Tim, I don't know if you want to do it from sitting down there or up there. I don't know which way you want to handle it, but I'll leave it up to you. Okay. Okay, whatever you feel more comfortable with doing.
All right,
and you have the floor, sir.
Okay, is my mic on? Okay. I'll just do it from here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll just go through the PowerPoint presentation that we put together just to give an update on Tammany Utilities in general. Rick, next slide, please. This just gives a general overview of all the facilities that Tammany Utilities has. Each of the green dots denotes a wastewater treatment plant that Tammany Utilities operates. Next slide, Rick. And those are the water wells that Tammany Utilities operates parish-wide. Next slide. This is just to give a general overview. Those are the sewage lift stations, and honestly, there are a lot of those that are not shown on that, because if you zoom further into Google Earth, you would see more. We have about 230 or 240 lift stations now. Next slide. For March 2020 to March 2021, Tammany Utilities completed 7,532 work orders. That includes repairs, maintenance, complaints, meter rereads, a whole host of things that we address on a daily basis. Next slide, Rick. Some of the projects that we have coming up, our Goodby Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant project. This is an expansion that's going to need to be done to keep up with development in that area. This is out north of Highway 190 on Highway 1077. And as we go through these slides, I'm moving from west to east in the parish. So this is going to expand from the current 50,000 gallon per day plant to 700,000 gallons per day. We have Greenpoint Engineering under contract doing the design work. We've got 4 subdivisions that are going to be expanding that's going to accommodate. And the total budget we have allotted for that is $4.3 million. Next slide, Rick. The Betico Fallberg water interconnection. This is a project to combine 2 of our water systems in western St. Tammany Parish. It's going to extend about 5,000 feet of 12-inch water main from the Betico Creek subdivision to Fox Branch subdivision. Like I said, it's going to consolidate 2 water systems, our Fallberg Coquille water system and our Betico Creek water system. It's going to provide better pressure and higher quality water to the western end of our Fallberg Coquille water system, and the total budget for that is $440,000. Next slide, Rick. The West St. Tammany Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant expansion. Again, this is to keep up with development in the area. We currently have a 500,000 gallon per day plant. It's going to be expanded to 1.25 million. It's going to add a 750,000 gallon per day plant and a 400,000 gallon EQ to the existing 500,000 gallons. The design is about at 90%. The plans, I believe, have already been submitted to LDH for approval. I think the engineer's working with LDH to get those comments back so that we can get the permit to construct. It's going to provide additional capacity for several different developments out in that area, and the total budget for that project is $7.4 million. Next slide. As part of that project, we had to acquire some additional property. That property has been acquired. That was a long process trying to get that little highlighted piece. We're happy to finally have it. And that will go to the Planning Commission's May meeting, I believe, or maybe on this April meeting for a resub to incorporate that property into our existing utility property. Next slide. The Timber Branch 2 decommissioning. This is an attempt at regionalizing some of our facilities. It will be a public-private partnership with Utilities, Inc. The bulk service agreement for that project is in draft. It's currently being reviewed by the parish. If we agree to it with Utilities, Inc., it will have to go before the Public Service Commission because Utilities, Inc. is regulated by the PSC. The project would allow us to retain, for TU to retain our current customers, to expand our future customer base, decommission the Timber Branch 2 wastewater treatment plant, would possibly allow the parish to surplus the 3.8 acre site that Timber Branch 2 currently sits on. And it also might create a model for other public-private partnerships in the parish so that we might be able to regionalize some additional smaller wastewater treatment plants. This would need to extend a force main from our current location to UIL's treatment plant, which is about 4,600 feet. And in the future, it may allow us to also decommission a small treatment plant in close proximity for the Tallow Creek subdivision. The total project for the budget for this is $225,000, but we're also working with another private partner on this that we may end up having them contribute to the extension of that sewer force main. Next slide. This is a conceptual project at this point. Chafuncta Club Estates is over there off of Highway 21, and they're looking at expansion. This would allow us to send some of our flow to them. We'd again have to establish a bulk service rate with them. But in relatively easy fashion, we could send about 200,000 gallons per day of flow to them, and would create additional capacity at our West St. Tammany plant for additional development in that area. Again, that one's conceptual at this point. Next slide, Rick. Another conceptual project, the Highway 22 wastewater treatment plant to the city of Mandeville. This would also be a project to decommission a plant. This would send 500,000 gallons per day to the city of Mandeville. The original construction cost estimate was $5.1 million to extend the sewer force main down Highway 22. But honestly, that one is, that would be a difficult task. If you see the top picture up there, that was the original configuration of the force main. You've got a lot of conflicts through that area. So we're looking at, in the future, maybe looking at a different layout where we're kind of going back along the power line through the marsh back there. That way we avoid a lot of conflicts. So we're looking at trying to do this in the next 5 years or so. So a lot of these projects are oriented towards the parish's ultimate regionalization goals, where we're eliminating point source discharges. Next slide. This one is also a conceptual project where we would decommission our Westwood wastewater treatment plant and send it to the city of Mandeville. Another 500,000 gallon per day plant. The initial estimate's $1.5 million, and it would require the installation of about 8,600 feet of sewer force main. One of the issues that may affect this is what kind of downstream improvements the city of Mandeville may need to make to accommodate that. So that's something that we still need to work out. Next slide, Rick. Another decommissioning project, the Forest Park wastewater treatment plant to the city of Mandeville. This would decommission a small plant, a 10,000 gallon per day plant, and send the flow to the city of Mandeville. We'll have to acquire a servitude across some adjoining private property, and would require the extension of a 300 sewer force main to connect to the city. We'll be able to do that design in-house with our own in-house engineer. And we've got a budget of $180,000 to do that project. The complicating factor there is that servitude, acquiring that servitude across private property. Next slide. This is another decommissioning project, the Reddick wastewater treatment plant to the city of Mandeville. This is a small little 6,000 gallon per day plant. The engineered plans have already been done. Requires a 350-foot sewer force main to connect to the city. We've been working on an intergovernmental agreement to establish a bulk rate with the city to get this accomplished. Of course, David DeGeneres is no longer with the city, so that slide needs to be updated. The total budget for this is $28,000. Next slide. The preferred Equities wastewater treatment plant. This is the treatment plant that services this area along Highway 59 here. And we've got a lot of folks looking for sewer capacity along this corridor, and there's none to be had at the current time. So the plan is to eventually expand the current plant, decommission what we have there, and build new plants there. We'd like to pursue this in 2022, and we're looking at some alternative sources of funding for that, whether it be some state low-interest loans through DEQ. We're looking at some different options on that. Next slide. The Tammany wastewater treatment plant expansion. You can see we have a lot of expansions, a lot of development going on in the parish, and we're trying to keep up. This would expand the current 50,000 gallon per day plant to 150,000 gallon per day. We're working with the developer on this. D.R. Horton will be making the first expansion of this and then donate that infrastructure to us. So that plan is currently in design. Next slide. Medcath water secondary source. This is to extend a water main down Highway 434 to tie into the Tammany end water system. This is the Louisiana Heart Hospital. So this is a regulatory requirement that we provide a secondary source for that system. The complicating factor in this is that DOTD is talking about widening 434. We hate to put pipe in the ground and spend that money, and then DOTD comes in and tells us, hey, you got to move this pipe. We need to widen the highway. So we're coordinating with DOTD, trying to get a time frame for when they may widen that highway. So we're looking at that. We have a total budget of $350,000 for that, and we would do that design in-house. Next slide. The Crossgates wastewater treatment plant expansion and replacement. The Crossgates plant, it's kind of hard to see on that bottom picture down there, is actually 3 plants that work together. The one on the top up there, the northernmost plant, is the oldest plant, and it needs to be replaced. So this project will demolish that oldest plant. We'll construct a new plant in its place, create some additional capacity. The center plant there will be converted into an equalization basin, and it's going to expand the total capacity of that plant from 900,000 gallons per day to 1 million gallons per day. The discharge location will remain the same. The construction estimate for that is $5.5 million, and we're looking at trying to do that next year. We're looking at some different, when we do our capital budget this year, we'll include that in the capital budget for that project. And we're also looking at some alternative funding mechanisms for that too. Next slide. This is a project that we're working on with the Department of Health, trying to get this done. This would expand water service to the Ozone Pines development up there. The Ozone Pines development is has some issues. It's run by kind of a HOA. So we're working with the state to try to improve the situation for those folks. I should also add that on the Crossgate system, we've got a new development coming in called Military Ridge, which is right there north of the interstate on Military Road. As a requirement for that subdivision, they're having to put in a new water well and new water storage tank. That water well and storage tank will be tying into the Crossgate system. So the Crossgate system at that point will have not just the 2 existing wells, but it'll have a 3rd new well and new storage tank. So it'll be an improvement in that regard. When we try to work with the state on this, the state, we're hoping, will be able to give us some money to extend this, the water mains to this area and improve the situation for those folks who don't have a very reliable system. Next slide. The Herwig Bluff water main project. This is an extension of a 10-inch water main along Herwig Bluff Road, about 1,700 feet. This is being installed to improve the fire flows in the Bluff subdivision. The design's being done by the in-house engineer, and the total budget for that is $285,000. We just got I believe we just got this final survey back from the surveyor on this project so that our engineer can complete his design. Next slide, Rick. The Herwig Bluff Sewage Lift Station upgrade. This will expand the storage capacity of the existing lift station. The engineers we're going to have an outside engineer work on this for us. The engineers will look at increasing the pumping capacity also. The size of the existing force main running from the Herwig Bluff lift station to the wastewater treatment plant is the limiting factor in this. So we're going to have to see what the engineers come up with and how much we can increase the pumping capacity. The survey of the property is complete, and we have received a proposal from a consulting engineer on that. The total budget for that is $342,000. Next slide, Rick. And this is just kind of an overview of the improvements that have been done in the past 5 years out there at Cross Gates. This does not, the total down there, $782,000 over the past 5 years does not include the previous 4 projects that we talked about. So we'll be adding the $5.5 million for the treatment plant and the money for those other projects that we discussed. Next slide, Rick. And this is a project that we're pursuing, and we've actually requested this money from the state in the 2021-2022 capital outlay money. Right there along Highway 11, north of the interstate, but kind of between Highway 11 and Camp Villery, it's extending all the way up into Pearl River. It's the only opportunity zone in St. Tammany Parish. If we're able to get this money, it will allow us to create corridors along Highway 11, Receiving Station Road, and the T.J. Smith Senior Expressway that will be primed for economic development. It will create a regional wastewater treatment facility and a regional public water system. It will allow the consolidation of a couple wastewater treatment plants in that vicinity. It will also allow for the consolidation of some water systems in there that need help. That's it for my presentation at this point. I'll turn it back to you, Councilman.
Thank you, Tim. Tim, where are we at relative to employees on board, new and positions open and things like that?
We just had someone leave. We have 2 vacancies? 2 vacancies at this point.
Okay. All right. Okay. Mr. Mike Smith, you have a question, sir?
Tim, I know the water tower one's out a ways. You know, it's dependent on a lot of different things. Can you give a rough idea when the Herwig Bluff might be finished?
The water main?
Yeah, they're laying the water line, yeah.
Yeah, our engineer should be completing that design, and we hope to, it remains to be seen once he completes the design how much it's going to cost us. We may be able to do that with an existing contract for our maintenance contractor. If it's not too high, if it exceeds a certain threshold, then we're going to have to go out to bid on that.
Okay, and so it's going to be a little bit of work before they're ready to.
Yeah, well, the design is pretty close to being complete, so we ought to know probably within the next month or 2 how we're going to have to procure that.
Okay, and then as far as the treatment plant, any ideas along that line? Kind of just a rough idea, maybe what kind of time frame?
Well, I think the design is going to be complete this year. I'm hoping that maybe by the 4th quarter of this year, we may be able to put it out to bid. That definitely is going to have to go out to bid. And by that time, we should have committed to the money for 2022.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions from any other members of the council on the presentation? Okay, Mr. Bender?
Regarding the presentation?
Yes, sir.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, that was the main focus to get an update on things. Tim, where are we at financially since the last, before COVID, when we met? Where's Tammany Utilities?
In terms of
How are we situated? What's our financial position? I mean, are we making money? We breaking
Well,
even?
yeah,
We
no,
losing?
No, sir.
What's the deal?
Revenues are exceeding expenses. That money's rolled into our general fund, not the parish general fund, into the enterprise fund. It's separate monies, obviously. No, we're doing well. The challenge with all these projects is that historically we've been taking that out of our fund balance. And because we've got so many projects going on at the same time, that model's not going to be able to sustain us. So we're going to have to look at some alternative funding options. Some of those are the low-interest loans through LDH and DEQ. We're looking at those funding options. The capital outlay, we're looking at that. And LDH also has a program where if we're consolidating water systems and some of those water systems are deemed to be underperforming by LDH, they have 100% loan forgiveness. So we're exploring that also.
Where are we at with purchasing equipment? I remember, as I said, prior to COVID, we looked at purchasing readers and things like that. Where do we stand on that since that time?
Yeah, no, in terms of procurement of materials, we're working with procurement on some of the materials bids to get out for this year. Most of our stuff is on bid now so that we're able to procure it quickly and efficiently. The auto dialers, I don't know if that's what you're referring to. Okay. The auto dialers, we've got, I want to say, close to 90 installed. Those have been working out very well for us. Mm-hmm. And we've got money this year for, I think, do you recall how many additional was it? $150,000 to spend on auto dialers. I think they're about $1,200 a piece.
Maybe when you have a chance after this meeting, prepare something that you can pass out to the council and let them know how that purchasing is going on also.
Certainly.
Okay, along with employees and so forth, how that's coming about. Is there anything else you want to discuss relative to your presentation or anything else?
No, sir, I think that's about it.
Okay. Ms. Hayes, is there anything you'd like to, as far as the administration on the presentation itself? We'll get into the other issue a little later, but is there anything you'd like to enlighten us on relative to Tammany Utilities?
Regarding the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
No,
Okay.
I think you covered everything.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Canulet.
Yes. So Tim, I want to follow up with what Mike asked you. I understand that revenues are exceeding the expenses, but what percent are we talking about? Are we talking about 1%, 5%, 10%? It ain't got to be exact, but I would like kind of know where we're at with that exactly, please.
I don't know.
This was our budget for this year. This includes some of our fund balance for some of the capital projects for 2021. So it's going to be hard to tell on here, and I don't have that. I didn't bring that with me.
Yeah, if Leslie Long were here to explain that, I think she'd be a better person to answer that question.
Can you make sure y'all get that question to Leslie and get us an answer, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Bender?
Let's see.
Mr. Bender?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, we'll be moving on to the public.
No, sir, we're still on the presentation. Any questions to Mr.?
No, sir, thank you. My mistake again.
Okay. All righty, thank you. Thank you, Jerry. All righty, okay, we'll go to the second part of the meeting will be relative to the Cross Gates issue that has been on the forefront for the last week or two or 10 days, and we'll go into that now. Once again, if anyone wishes to speak, please fill out a card. I know I have some, but please put your card up. And anyone speaking, let's be very, I know everybody's passionate on an issue relative to their community, and let's just respect everybody and be civil and as we discuss this situation. Before we get into it, Mr. Bender, I'm going to call on you. I believe you wanted to read something into the record.
Yes, sir. Yes. I do feel obliged to read this into the record on behalf of myself and all of the council members who are on the St. Tammany Utilities Work Group. And let me say that this work group was not developed just recently. When our good friend and former colleague, Gene, who I think's still here, there he is, Gene, was representing District 9, a number of us decided to try to be helpful in communicating with the head of Tammany Utilities, the heads, whatever, and the CAO in meetings, and try to be helpful. And Gene can tell you, we did a lot of meetings, and we tried to make good progress, okay? Because there are a lot of public records requests already in the hopper from both the press, I can say Ms. Pagonis, correct, Ms. Pagonis? Yes. And the parish is very knowledgeable of that and aware of that, and I believe also from citizens. I want to read the following. At about 2:30 this afternoon, the members of the Utilities Work Group Committee, or Work Group, received an email from our parish president, CAO, Ms. Gina Hayes. Let me say in advance that I've not had any difficult dealings with Ms. Gina in the time that she's been with us. I want to say that in advance. Besides to us, it was also sent to President Cooper, to Carlin Riles, who is our council administrator, to Mr. Tim Brown, to Tina McGee St. Clair. Is Ms. St. Clair here? And Ms. St. Clair, what is your title? Assistant Director. To Cynthia Samuel. Is Ms. Samuel here? And what is your title, ma'am? Assistant Director. To Todd A. Tawargano. Is that you, sir? And what is your title?
Field Operations Supervisor.
Field Operations Supervisor. That is the list besides those of us on this group, which are all council members. The subject is meeting tonight. Dear Councilmen Lorino, Dean, Davis, Canulet, Mike Smith, and Bender. In anticipation of tonight's Utilities Work Group meeting, I would like to make a request. Our citizens of Crossgates are very upset. They truly feel that their water is unsafe and are fearful. Unfortunately, this is due to two things. One, a lack of trust in Tammany Utilities due to past misdeeds of a prior department head. In parentheses, so I am told. I was not here at the time, and 2, misinformation. The fact is that their water in bold letters is safe to drink. Tammany Utilities has followed every procedure with regard to both the sewer force main break and the low chlorine residual at one address in Crossgates. We are prepared to address their concerns tonight. Our goal is to provide our citizens with accurate information. We have also invited the consultant who tests our water, a representative from LDH and a representative from LDEQ. Because of the past and the level of distrust, we are going to start sending notifications to our citizens of Crossgates far in excess of what is required. Ordinarily, this is not a good course of action. Over-notifying typically has the opposite effect, i.e. excessive notifications result in important notifications being disregarded. However, we are willing to do everything we can to prove to them that we are, in fact, doing everything correctly and that their water is safe. We have the proof, we have the tests, we have the experts, and all will be presented tonight. This is where I need your assistance, mainly council members on the work group. I know you want our citizens of Crossgates to feel heard and know that you care. Let them know that is why this meeting is taking place. This meeting, as Councilman Lorino said, was put into the plan as a follow-up meeting, but of course, he wisely added our citizens to this meeting. Let them know that this is why this meeting is taking place, to get the answers they want and deserve. Nothing has been done incorrectly. No rules or procedures have been broken. LDEQ and LDH will be here to verify that. I simply ask that you hear all the facts before joining the attack on TU. Attacking TU will feed the fear that something is wrong or someone is to blame and further perpetuate this issue. Once the facts are presented, I know we can count on each of you to help to ease the minds of our citizens of Crossgates. Thank you for your consideration. If you have any questions or concerns before the meeting, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Gina Hayes, Chief Administrative Officer. So let me make a few comments here, Mr. Chairman, so that everyone in the public who's not used to hearing, this, knowing our process and so forth. I said earlier, I've never had a difficulty with Ms. Gina Hayes, and I stay with that. I will say, in my almost 23 years on the Slidell City Council, and now, 23 years on the Slidell City Council and St. Tammany Parish Council, which is now approaching 17 years. With no disrespect to Ms. Hayes, I say this: I have never received an email like this that is so totally inappropriate, and sends an insinuation that the members of this council please considering play ball. Please consider playing ball. We're not here to play ball. We're elected officials. We're here to do what's right. We're here to hear the truth. Believe me, when we were on the utilities work group before, if we would have taken this letter and abided by that, we would have just sat there and heard a whole bunch of baloney without even giving any credibility to it, because this letter asked us to do just that. Oh, take our word. Bull. It's your problem. You've been at it for 1 year and 4 months. It's your director. It's your people. I love all of our employees in the sense of I want to respect everybody. It's not about disrespect. This council, our only employees are our council staff. The parish president is not here. That's his decision. And we received this letter just about 3 hours before the council meeting. I'm not the only one who thought it was inappropriate and unwise. I sought advice of 2 high-ranking members of our staff who feel exactly the same way. So this was going to become public, but guess what? It was not going to become public by the people or the press having to ask for a public records request. When Ms. Hayes wrote this, she knew it was part of the public record. Therefore, I felt an obligation. Our chairman agreed, Mr. Smith agreed, and every council member that I was able to talk to, and in addition to the 2 highest ranking members of our staff, agreed that this should be read into the record tonight, and you all be made aware before you speak to us. You will have our full attention. None of us were here to attack anybody. Before the attack begins, we have what? Clairvoyance on the administration side of government? Their track record is poor.
Okay, Jerry, let's kind of stay on that, please.
Mr. Chairman, it is what it is.
I know.
We've dealt with it, you and I and other council members, for 15, 16 months. To get this is absolutely abhorrent, in my opinion, and I have no problem saying it in public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. I appreciate it. Mr. Davis? Ms. Hayes?
Yes, with all respect to Councilman Bender, I disagree. When I read the email, being a newbie on the council now, I read it as just a state of information. I can see how people can interpret things wrong and stuff like that. And I know, Councilman Bender, you've been up here for quite a few years and stuff, but I mean, I'm not taking it personally from Ms. Hayes that she's trying to tell us, that she's just trying to encourage us to listen to the facts. I wish you would have said that after we listened to LDH and DEQ tonight, before you attempted to go ahead and do that now. So I just want to put on record that I just disagree with your interpretation of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to do a follow-up.
Okay, we're not going to, Jerry, we're not going to, okay, you got 10 seconds. Go ahead.
Mr. Davis, I appreciate your views. I've seen these views before in terms of the council's views and the administration. The reason it's said is because these people deserve to know it was written, not just you and me.
Okay, Jerry. Thank you, sir. Okay. Ms. Hayes. And then we'll get into the meat of the matter.
Is my mic on?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I have no problem with that email being read into the record. I stand by every word that I said. I do believe the people of Cross Gates deserve the facts and should know the facts, all of the facts. And all I asked was that the council review all of the facts and hear all of the facts before they quickly jumped to any conclusions. That's all I asked for. So I stand by my email, and I apologize if Mr. Bender was offended by it. I didn't in any way mean to be offensive, other than I do believe that we should rely on the facts of the incidents, and that's all. But I have no problem with it being read into the record, and yes, I do know that my email is public record. I have no issue with that.
Thank you, ma'am. And just on the close on this subject, this council, whether it's this case, any case that comes before the council, I know the members of this council, and they take everything serious, and sometimes we take it a little too serious, but we always give the people a full, fair hearing, and that's the way it's always been since I've been here, and that's the way it'll be. So thank you. All right. I'm looking forward to, as Mike Lorino, I'm looking forward to hearing the facts also, and ready to go. Okay, what we're going to do is I have 2 cards that will have 7 minutes each on the subject, okay? And then I'll go into the remaining cards, and they will have 3 minutes each. And we'll talk about it, then the council members can ask questions. I don't know if the representative of LDH or LDEQ which wish to speak. If you do, you need to let me know, and I'll be happy to do that, and I'll come back to you. But what we'll do is we'll go to Mr. Waguespack first, please. Neil?
Yep, my son's here as well. Do y'all mind if I lower my mask so I don't fog my glasses?
It happens all the time here, so you go ahead, sir.
All right, sounds good, thank you.
Okay, sir. Please state your name and we'll get started.
Neil Waguespack.
Thank you.
Members of the utility work group, I voted for Mike Cooper because of the promise of a change. I met Mike and had discussions with him at the wine market in Slidell while he was running. We discussed several items that night, the most important of which were the water and sewer problems plaguing our side of town at the hands of Tim Brown and Tammany Utilities East. Mr. Cooper assured me at that time that if he was successful in his run for parish president, he was going to bring about change and remedy the harm that Tammany Utilities was causing all of us. Mr. Brown worked for DEQ from 1994 to 1998, straight out of LSU, and graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science. In August of 2018, I spoke before the council on the MWPP issue, as TU East and Mr. Brown was underreporting spills and sewer overflows. Many during that time, including our own councilman, fought against our efforts. However, the residents in this case were certainly right, and LDEQ issued TU East a compliance order, WEC 18-00142. TU East, under Mr. Brown's operating direction and despite his work history at LDEQ, underreported more than 45 sewer overflows. Mr. Brown has been the Assistant Director of Operations since 2010, meaning that he has been making operating, reporting, and capital appropriation decisions for our water and sewer systems for more than 10 years. Mr. Brown is also responsible for reviewing and designating maintenance and repairs needed by the system. Many thought Greg Gordon was behind the problems in Tammany Utilities, but most do not realize that Tim oversaw the operations while Greg was the Environmental Services Director. With Greg gone, the problems again point at Mr. Brown as the cause. As I learned about the timeline for both water well failures, I was able to link the timeline of vet visits for my pets on multiple occasions to dates where TU dosed extremely high chlorine into the water, and my pets and the humans in our household had gastrointestinal issues. To say it nicely, my cats and dogs had diarrhea all over my house from one end to the other. On multiple occasions, we had many nights we lost pressure and disinfection. I reported the issues multiple times until I realized we were just playing a gotcha game with TU and started reporting problems directly to LDEQ and LDH before notifying TU. I'm sure you've heard the saying, picture or it didn't happen. Well, that must be TU's mission statement, as it's their typical response to a resident reporting an overflow or water quality issue. TU has never been proactive about problem resolution or customer service, and LDH, DHH enforces the regulations based on the honor system. Unfortunately, there is no honor among criminals, and Mr. Brown to say that enforcement by LDH has been lacking as well over the years is an understatement. In 2018, I submitted 13 PRRs requesting information to figure out what was going on with my family's water. I spent hundreds of dollars on documents, and the lack of honesty and transparency by Mr. Brown cost the parish thousands of dollars potentially responding to my request. My family has lived in our current house since 2007. In 2017, TU started running the Willowwood and Steel Road wells as a common system. They're not valved off from each other, servicing independent service areas like one would typically expect. The chlorine roller coaster resulting from the improperly operated system causes my family great harm. My family members take a bath or shower and at times immediately start to itch so severely that Benadryl is needed to sleep and take the edge off. Also, within the last 2 weeks, we have a new gift from TU, and my oldest son and oldest daughters have developed rashes. Our family only drinks Kentwood for safety reasons. My water testing over the years, coupled with the events of the last 2 weeks, demonstrate that the water is not safe to drink. It is not to be trusted, and confirm that I cannot expect TU to make the right call when my family's safety and health is on the line. The Kentwood tax, as we affectionately call it, is a direct result of Tammany Utilities' inability to produce clean, clear, and safe water and cost my family anywhere from $125 to $150 a month. My pets drink Kentwood. In 2018, I reviewed the size and service area of Crossgate's water system. The system serves over 10,000 people and requires Class 4 operating licensure. Tammany Utilities had no Class 4 operators directly overseeing our water system or properly calculating and dosing the chemical feeds. I filed a complaint with LDH Board of Operators, and as a result, Mr. Brown actually ended up going and getting his Class 4 license. Once again, residents were right. I'll ask you, if you need a surgery to remove your gallbladder, would you trust your health to an unlicensed doctor to perform surgery on you? This situation is no different. Through time, water is always viewed as healing. Most people who have sickness, itching, rashes do not look to the water as being the source of their ailment. In my family's case, and in the case of many other families, it's certainly the cause. Due to the failures of Tammany Utilities, Mr. Brown and the residents pulled together and purchased the equipment that you'll see. I have it in my bag. I'll show it to you in a minute. Each of the blue hawk boxes contain equipment worth approximately $500. The plastic bag contains another test meter of equivalent value. The cost to perform these tests range from 50 cents for a DPD chlorine test to $1.50 for each monochloramine and free ammonia test. This cost of testing, coupled with the Kentwood tax, unfortunately is the cost we endure to try and keep our families safe. When LDH came out on 4/9 and measured all of the TCR locations, why was an additional TU employee running one test tap ahead of LDH and Aaron Davis, opening faucets to flush water through before LDH and TU personnel arrived to take the official test? The answer is easy. TU had a lot to hide and knew that by moving water through the system in advance of LDH's test, they could ensure that the test had the greatest chance of passing. On a public drinking water system with ongoing sewer breach next to the wellhead, is it criminally negligent to have your operators repeatedly find zero residual around the contamination zone and not call a BWA? Is it criminally negligent to perform bacterial tests, not to perform bacterial tests from 3/27 to 4/4 during the actual event to confirm that the drinking water is safe? Is it criminally negligent to tell the councilman you will remove the sewer discharge manually with tanker trucks, but then begin pumping hundreds of thousands of gallons into the breach again, and when you get caught by LDH, they issue you a notice of violation on 4/9? Is it criminally negligent to operate a water system outside of its permit?
Okay, Mr. Wagaspan, you have to wrap it up for me, please,
Okay,
sir.
I got 2 more points. Is it criminally negligent to obtain an operating permit in conjunction with published sets of standard operating procedures and then never ensure that the operations specified in those procedures are followed? After saying all the above in that bag right there, I have a bottle of water that was filled up during the event from 3/28 to 4/4. I'll put it on that table. It came within 500 feet of the breach, and I would challenge anybody to sit there and say that that water's safe and take a drink of it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. David Bender?
I've got some brochures, if you could.
Sure, if you don't mind, just pass them up. You gotta give them to somebody who'll get them for you. Thank you.
Got two left. Does everybody have them?
Yep, we got them. Go ahead, Dave.
You got it? Okay.
Thank you.
I can remove the mask.
You sure
Okay,
can.
great. Before I get started, I just want to make one comment. Mr. Brown put up a lot of slides earlier that we all saw, and it is good to put slides up and say what you're going to do, but what tends to happen is, for example, in August 2019, the council approved 14-0 to have SCADA systems installed on our 3 wells, about $60,000 appropriated. And when this event occurred, one of the things we looked for was the SCADA units, and the SCADA units are still not installed. So
Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment as to the slides.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Is it going to restart, Mr. Lorino?
As soon as you go ahead. Hold on 1 second, sir.
Sure.
If I don't. Ready? You got it, sir.
Ready? Okay. My name is David Bender, and I have lived in Cross Gates for the past 16 years. I have lived in Slidell for 42 years. In 2019, President Mike Cooper, in his run for parish president, ran an iconic ad that showed up in mailboxes in East Slidell. I really appreciated the ad at the time. That ad, which I have here and have distributed to you, says, "Who suffers? You do." Those words have never been more true in this current failure of leadership by Tammany Utilities. We are 16 months into the Cooper administration, and we feel like things have in fact not improved, sir. In the past week, I've heard from residents in New Cross Gates who have reported to me that they were sickened during the time period in question. To say I have experienced water and sewer problems myself would be an understatement. In 2014, I came home from vacation and was unable to flush my toilets. I sought TU help, but instead of getting help, I got a letter in the mail from a parish attorney fining me $250 on my next water bill. Over the next several months of 2014, I learned many other residents were also being mistreated and also were experiencing sewer overflows and water problems. One owner I spoke with told me he had suffered $37,000 of interior sewer damage as his home had flooded with sewage during a large rain event. The media wrote many articles on the matter, and some things got fixed, but many problems remained. In 2017, we had the water well crisis in Cross Gates, where the only 2 wells that serviced the 8 neighborhoods of 10,000 people were both inoperable at the same time. This caused a chlorine crisis that sent shock levels of chlorine through our pipes unexpectedly on multiple occasions and nightly losses in pressure. A boil water advisory was not called and the public was not notified until it was too late, and many pets especially got sick, and even some parents called me to say their kids were throwing up from drinking the high chlorine. Because of this crisis, a large group of residents got together to demand change. We bought our own, as Neil said, we bought our own hawk test equipment, we learned water chemistry, and also sewer guidelines and regulations. We became friends with LDH officials and TU employees alike. We attended tours and we photographed the water and sewer systems where possible. We lobbied for change, including new flow meters, SL1000s, and SCADA monitoring, among other things on the water side. On the sewer side, we lobbied for force main upgrades and various upgrades on the sewer system. With that being said, living in Cross Gates still requires bottled water on a regular basis. It also requires various forms of filtering to deal with the constant chloramine bounces. Some of these products I brought with me today as examples. So this is a shower head you have to use in Cross Gates. This is a certain type of tablet. This costs probably about $80 a month. You have to use it to deal with the chloramine bouncing. I've been using it at my house for probably about 3 to 4 years. So now let's talk about the crisis of 2021. Free chlorine is used in most water systems. In our case, TU has chosen to run a chloramine system instead. Chloramines are able to travel long distances without being depleted, and they are primarily used as a secondary disinfectant. In St. Bernard Parish, for example, these chloramines safely make it to Shell Beach and Breton Sound at a level of 2 parts per million at the endpoint fire hydrant. So chloramines do bring durability, but let's look at what just happened in Cross Gates during Holy Week from March 28th to April 2nd, where our chloramine residuals were constantly at 0 for 6 days straight. For some perspective, my home is the first residential home on the Cross Gates side of the Willowwood wellhead. So what I am saying is that I am the closest residential home to the water well on the Crossgate side. Not only that, in 2017, my water line was rerouted, which I have pictures of, as a direct tie-in to the main trunk line water main coming directly off the Willowwood wellhead. That being the case, I always have the highest monochloramine readings at my home of any home in all of Crossgates. There are no impediments that can impede this from being true. The well also has a thermal effect, so I measure the water temperature to also verify I am receiving it directly from the well, which is about 92 to 93 degrees. However, during the sewer spill contamination event, my home was tested more than 3 times per day for total chlorine, and at no time between March 28th and April 1st did I ever have a reading higher than 0. TU's own operator also provided his own readings to one of our people throughout the crisis, and he was finding similar numbers of 0, meaning loss of disinfection, in the next block after my home as well. Even the Shell gas station across the street from the well could not hold a residual. This was reported directly from operator Aaron Davis to Stephen Leach in person on April 2nd at approximately 1 p.m. These operators who were aware of these 0 residuals began opening hydrants and non-premise plumbing water outlets along the streets. We can provide you with video evidence of all of this. Despite the residents' assertions that a boil water advisory needed to be called, TU refused to call one. We had direct evidence of people getting sick from the water, and we hoped to prevent others from getting sick also. I personally pleaded with Councilman Mike Smith face to face for an advisory while we stood in the street on March 28th, but an advisory never did occur. The 0 residuals continued to be 0 from March 27th to March 28th to March 29th to March 30th to March 31st to April 1st to April 2nd. LDH finally arrived on April 1st, and they confirmed our data exactly at 915 Crossgates Boulevard with a reading by LDH of 0.05 total chlorine. 915 is directly across the street from St. Luke's Church, and it was Holy Week and being heavily attended. Despite LDH finding 0.05 in the block of St. Luke's Church, and then finding 0.71 and 0.83 and 0.71 total chlorine blocks further down away from the well, which also provided further proof something was wrong. Despite this, and despite LDH issuing a violation that afternoon on Holy Thursday, April 1st, even still, TU refused to issue a boil water advisory. No form of any type of notification ever went out to the public at all. The disregard for the public's health and well-being in this case is unthinkable and unfathomable. I am standing here today in closing asking the St. Tammany Parish President and the St. Tammany Parish Council to take action. I am also standing here to state to President Mike Cooper once again, who suffers, sir? We do. Thank you. Thank you all very much, sir.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Mr. Adam Joyner, I believe. Adam? Okay.
Thank you. Mine's a bit shorter.
Hold on one
I have
second.
3 minutes.
Hold on 1 second now. Okay, sir, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Members of the Utility Work Group, my name is Adam Johnson. I've been living on the TU system for 12 years, and I have been dissatisfied for the entirety of that time. But I didn't fully understand the true issues until I moved into New Crossgates. Since then, I have been met with violation after violation. I have been met with wells not functioning properly, a true lack of transparency to the public, and a failure to manage the system safely for the ultimate users, the residents. The most recent major issue of sewage, the sewage spill that we're speaking of, leading to no sanitation in the water, brought me back to a recording that I listened to back from 2018. In this recording, John Williams from LDH was speaking about how TU was testing water incorrectly and using the wrong equipment. He even went as far as to say that TU was using, open quote, pool test kits to test our drinking water. Let me pause there and let you truly think about what I just said. TU, who is in charge of ensuring our drinking water is safe, is essentially using pool test kits to test our drinking water. Although the pool test kit is approved for water, HOC recommends that you do not use it for compliance. You guys were also using glass vials. It's supposed to be plastic. How are we allowing a lack of training and a true lack of accountability and an overall lack of transparency to continue? I had a phone call with Mr. President Mike Cooper on Good Friday the 2nd in an effort to fill him in on the water issues that transpired. These water issues began on 3/28. He notified me that he knew something was happening, but he wasn't fully aware of the details. I informed him that we suspected cross-contamination in our water and that multiple tests showed no sanitation, 0. I am unsure what actions President Cooper has taken up to this point, but I can tell you that 11 days have since passed from our phone call, and I am still not satisfied with how this is being managed, and I am absolutely not satisfied how it's being communicated to the public, because it has not yet been communicated. I am one of the residents whose family uses bottled water to brush our teeth. We give our cats bottled water. I refuse to bathe my 6-month-old daughter in TU's water, simply because the trust is not there that TU has my family's safety in mind. And time has proven that you do not. TU has lied to the public many times, and it is, in my opinion, that this most recent event is grounds for a complete reorganization of how TU is managed and by whom. An estimated 500,000 gallons of sewage had been leaked under Gauls Boulevard. How many residents knew this? I'm going to venture a guess to say not enough, because it was never communicated. I witnessed this sewage breach firsthand with my own eyes. No BWA was issued. No do not drink order was issued. And I'll skip down to the bottom.
Yes, sir.
The time for action is now. The time to get this right is well past due. When TU continually puts the safety and well-being of their customers at risk, us, it is in my opinion that the parish president and that this work group have a responsibility to get involved, act with a sense of urgency and accountability, fix this issue. This is not one that I will sweep under the rug, and it would be a failure of your civic duty to do so.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Barry, Denise? Dennis? Dennis? Okay, I see it now. It's got an E on it. Come on up, Mr. Dennis.
I've been called worse.
That's all right. You're like me. I've been thrown out of better places, huh?
I've lived in Cross Gates about 2.5 years, so I'm not aware of a whole lot of the previous problems or whatnot. My main issue in my 2.5 years is that when things do happen, the lack of notice. I believe I'd signed up to either be texted or emailed or phoned or something. I've through all the 2.5 years, I don't know how many boil advisors we've had, but I usually find out from a neighbor or from a sign from the homeowners association. And at my house, I do live alone. I have a pet. In this most recent event, I found out again through another neighbor, my cat had been messing all over the house and throwing up and whatever else. That's how I found out about it. And as far as I go, I drink bottled water exclusively and wine, so I'm not much into anything else. So, but that's it. The lack of notice is my most aggravating factor that I can contribute to this. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you for coming, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Balisaro. You related to Gene Balisaro that used to be up here?
Maybe. One of the things I want you to know so you understand it, I don't trust this water. I moved here in June of 1984. In my first week living in the Willowwood subdivision on Berrywood Court, the water tasted like rotten eggs. I got Kentwood water from then through 95, got a divorce. I switched to bottled water rather than the 5-gallon container. I have never drunk this water, and I won't. I rarely use it to brush my teeth because I don't trust it. It's that simple. I started the utility work group with people chastising me, but I saw what was going on when I put up 5 MWPPs. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
The frickin' wording was the same all the way through. I went back 5 more years and found out the replacement of MWPP1 was in the 5-year plan. It's still in the 5-year plan. We're talking 14 years later. The biggest problem is the lack of funding and concern by the administration. The old one and the new one. It hasn't changed. I believe the administration fully supports Tim, and that's a mistake. They're going to have to learn that because there are going to be problems because there's a lack of funding and sufficient number of employees. When I hear Herwig Bluff Road, that sewer manhole and the lift station, it's still in the talking phase. It should have been fixed 3 years ago. Could not get Greg Gordon and Tim to get it done. There are projects that have not even started that should have been done when we brought this up during the utility work group. You saw how much disarray was there. I want to know, number one, is when are they going to raise the rates to the users? I don't think these people care if we raise it, but you give them service and quality water. That's what they want. They don't want to fear drinking the water and get sick, but that's where they are, and it's getting worse. It is not getting better with the new administration. And you got to resolve it. I'm telling you the truth. I went through Tim's slides and I found several errors, but I'm not going to go through them. I'm concerned about different things. And number one, you've got to fix the problem. You need more people to monitor this system. You got to spend the money on the property, plant, and equipment to do it, and raise the rates to get it done. Because now TU East is using money from TU West. I'm sure that hasn't changed. I don't know if these two know that.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Miss Allison? Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, thank you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my family so you understand my urgency and my fervor in this matter. My husband and I have 3 sons, ages 10, 8, and 7. We are currently homeschooling due to COVID and at the request of our family immunologist. My oldest son and myself have a genetic immunodeficiency called primary immunodeficiency. We are prone to severe infections from things that most people would consider common illnesses. When my son was 16 months old, he was made severely ill by a rotisserie chicken from a grocery store. It almost killed him. He shed the lining of his intestines, had chronic inflammation of the gut, his growth was stunted, he had chronic diarrhea, he ended up with C. diff, and it almost killed him. He still suffers from the ailments of that pathogen. When you take somebody with an immunodeficiency and you strip their gut, it is a lifelong battle from then on. So when I hear of the instances, this perfect storm that happened under Tim Brown's watch, and I am faced with the fact that my son could have been bathing in, drinking, or brushing his teeth with E. coli, Cryptosporidium, Legionella, or Giardia, it is unforgivable. My family's lack of faith in TU, based on the events that occurred in 2017 and 2018, made our family install a whole home water, charcoal filter as well as a reverse osmosis filter for drinking. But this does not protect us against waterborne pathogens. So now my husband and I are having to face another financial hurdle of possibly putting UV filtration into our home because we cannot trust that Tim Brown will take the actions to ensure our safety. I do not believe due diligence was done during Holy Week. I do not believe that, where was your predecessor's famous words, right, was we're going to do a boil water advisory out of an abundance of caution. We couldn't even get that courtesy while you were figuring out why our system was so unstable. It was unstable for 9 days. Y'all couldn't figure out what was going on. You can't stand here and tell me we were not breached. That something contaminating our water was not exposed to us because you didn't look for it. It's unforgivable, and I'm asking you to please hold him accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. I did read your email also, ma'am. Thank you for sending it. Grant, Legismat?
Hello, my name is Grant Wagisback. I'm 19 years old, and I'm here to represent the young adults and teenagers who are affected by the water TU produces. I've lived on the system my entire life. However, the water has become unstable and unusable. I personally have been made physically sick with vomiting and diarrhea after consuming the water multiple times. I've developed rashes due to bathing in the water that begin to itch and flare up immediately after taking a bath or a shower. In terms of my family, my mom likes to take baths at night. On many occasions, she has been up through the night itching and unable to sleep without Benadryl. My sister, who is 17, has also been made physically sick and has developed rashes that flare up immediately after bathing in the water. One of my good friends, who is 18 and wanted to be here to speak tonight, is currently at home sick with a fever and an uneasy stomach due to the condition of the water. And also, as my dad previously mentioned, we do not even give the water that TU produces to our pets, as they have also been made physically sick on numerous occasions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Bryan? Mr. Bryan? Gattuso?
Gattuso.
Yes, sir.
Brian Gattuso,
Go ahead.
548 Waverly Drive. I'm going to echo the comments made here. I'm not going to go over the same thing. I totally agree with what's going on. Mr. Davis, I'm going to address you personally. Mr. Bender's comments were spot on. In fact, he was not harsh enough.
Okay, so address the chair, please.
I'm in the elevator business. Safety is paramount. I would say that everyone here has ridden an elevator. It's my responsibility to make sure my technicians and the riding public is safe. If it's not, you would not be riding that elevator. You wouldn't have me working on your elevators. It comes down to public safety. You guys have failed us in Crossgates, public safety. To hear what I just heard hits home, and it should hit home for you. It's unacceptable. I'm going to tell you how my customers would tell me, Tim, it's unacceptable. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, that's the last card that I have. Mr. Smith, would you like me to go to the administration or to you and Mr. Bender first? I can do either.
After that, maybe the administration?
I'm sorry?
Administration first and then me?
Yes, sir. Okay. But I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Mr. President, would you like to go first, or would you like Ms. Gina?
Gina's going to go first with the technical information. And I will
Perfect,
follow her.
perfect. And then also, we'll have has some questions for Mr. Tim Brown also, probably. So, anyway, Ms. Hayes, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening. I hope that I can provide some answers for you all. Like I said in my email to the councilman earlier today, I do believe everyone should have the opportunity to know the truth and all the details and the facts, and I do not think that anybody should have to live in fear of their own water. So everyone should have all the information at hand. The first thing I would like to discuss, well, first of all, I'd like to say that I really can't address things that happened in 2014 or 2017. That's nothing that I can address here tonight. I wasn't here, so I really can't speak on that. But I would like to address the two separate incidents that happened near Crossgates just recently during Easter week. There were two separate incidents that happened. One was a sewer break. We did have a sewer force main break, and then we also had a low chlorine residual at one address in Cross Gates. So these were two separate incidents, and so I'd like to address them that way. First, I'd like to talk about the sewer break. Sewer breaks happen. There is a procedure that we handle. It's in our standard operating procedures that we do for all sewer breaks. It happens all over the United States, not just in St. Tammany Parish. These things happen. There's no way to foresee something like that happening. As you know, sewer lines are underground, so there's no way that we can know that it's going to happen when it does. When it does, all we can do is the best we can do to fix it as quickly as possible, which is what we did. All sewer breaks and sewer issues are reported to LDEQ, not to LDH. So I think there was some misunderstanding with, there were some questions where people were asking us, why didn't you report to LDH? We do not report sewer issues to LDH. We report sewer issues to LDEQ. So that is correct. We did not immediately report to LDH because that's not who we're supposed to report to. It was reported immediately to LDEQ via email from Tim Brown to LDEQ, which they quickly responded back. Please keep us informed as you repair the situation. Once the repair was located and it was determined how bad it was, which I do want to mention, and Tim can get more into the details, but there weren't 500,000 gallons of raw sewage. That was not correct. But there was a break that does need to be repaired. Where it's broken is in conflict with several different underground utilities. So it will not be an easy fix. In order to fix where it is now, we would have had to tear up Gauze Boulevard.
Excuse me, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Bender, we gave everybody else our full attention. Ms. Hayes? That's okay.
We would have had to tear up Gauze Boulevard, which of course wasn't an option. So we chose another site where we could bore directly under Gauze. Unfortunately, there were a lot of conflicts with other utilities in that site as well. So those sites had to be verified, located, and verified, and some actually needed to be observed, physically dug and observed before we started the procedure. All of that was supposed to have been completed today. Was that completed today?
The bore was complete today.
The bore was complete today.
It will be pressure tested and tied in tomorrow.
Okay. So the repair will be taking place, finishing up hopefully tomorrow. So that's how that was done. LDEQ was, like I said, notified of that. In fact, I believe we had to file for a permit and did get a permit to do that work. Is that correct?
DOTD?
DOTD. Okay,
Yes.
sorry, DOTD. So we have reported everything and have our permits in order to take care of that. So that is the sewer issue. I will also mention that some people did see a sewer truck out there. That was our sewer truck. It was not any type of contractors. We did have a contractor that was doing the boring and the work on the line, but the trucks were ours. The pump trucks were ours. I know there was a question. I'm trying to address as many emails because we did get a lot of emails about this. There were some questions on why the sewer pump truck left, and the reason why it left was once the break was located and then that area where the break was backfilled and cleaned, we turned the lift station back on and it was able to handle it. So there was no reason to have the truck. The lift station is operating perfectly, right, Tim? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's why people haven't seen the truck out there. It's not because the raw sewage is going everywhere. It's being pumped by the lift station. That's okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Bender. We're not going to answer questions like that, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I think that I've covered everything with regard to the break. With regard to the low chlorine residual, well, before I get to the low chlorine residual, let me mention this. I know there was some concern that the break led to the low chlorine residuals because some people feared that it was leakage from the break that somehow got into our water system. I'd like to explain that water and sewer are not connected at all. They all have to be within so many feet apart.
Six feet horizontally.
Six feet apart horizontally. So water and sewer is not connected. If there were some type of crack in a water line or something like that, all of our water lines are pressurized. So any water, anything that would even approach a water line, the water would push that away from the line. And that's why boils are important, because when you lose pressure in a line, that would allow for something to get into the line. And there's two different things when you get a boil advisory. There's a boil advisory, and then there's a boil notice, a boil order. The boil advisory would come from us. That comes from your water service provider. That means that that pressure dropped and there was a possibility that something could have entered the line. A boil notice or advisory comes from LDH. That's when we know something has entered the line. With this recent issue, which was a sewer line break, that had nothing to do with the water system, and there was no way for it to have entered the line, so there would be no reason to do a boil advisory from us, and there would be no reason for LDH to require a boil notice because there was never anything found in our water system. So I think I've addressed everything with sewer. Now I'll go to the chlorine residual. Years ago, chlorine was not required in the water at the amounts that it's required in the water now. LDH changed the requirements statewide a few years back when the brain-eating amoeba came into the forefront. And there were several cases of that in Louisiana. One was in North Louisiana, one was in St. Bernard, and I think one came later, I believe in St. John Parish, but I'm not positive about that. In any event, the brain-eating amoeba cannot exist or survive 0.5 chlorine or higher. So that's why the 0.5 is so important. But what's important to know is that the brain-eating amoeba only exists in surface water. It doesn't come from well water or well water or spring water. It lives in rivers and in streams and lakes and things like that. Well, on the South Shore, that's important. It's very important to keep your chlorine levels very, high, or at least to 0.5 or higher, because the South Shore primarily gets their water from the Mississippi River. So that's why the water needs to be treated. Here, our water comes from springs and wells. So we don't have the existence of the brain-eating amoeba from our water system. It would only be if somehow groundwater intruded the system, which, as I explained already, because of the pressure in our lines, that's not possible unless we lose pressure. So a low chlorine level, while it's not great, it's not something that requires a boil advisory or notice. In fact, when we do receive a notice of violation for falling below the 0.5, the notice requires that you have, I believe, like 5 or 7 days to get your residual back up to the 0.5. So it's not like they say you have to have it immediately. They say it has to be, you have to get it back up within a certain time frame. And we resumed that 0.5 same day, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, on that Thursday, and then it fluctuated a little bit the following days. But after that Saturday, we've maintained above a 0.5.
Okay. The highest you can have is a 4. That's the annual requirement. It has to average a 4. So you can go above a 4, but you don't want to keep, the reason why we don't want to run, because that was one of the other emails we received, was, well, why don't we just put a lot of chlorine in the water all the time? Let's keep it at a 3 or keep it at a 2. Well, once you get around a 4, that's when it starts smelling like a swimming pool and people start itching and those kind of different things. It's not anything that's going to harm you, even like at a 6, that's when your clothes will start getting bleached in a washing machine and things like that. But it's certainly not something you want on a regular basis. No one wants to drink water that tastes like a swimming pool. And also it causes other issues too. So, we don't want to put too much chlorine in our water. We want to keep it low, especially because we don't run the risk that other water service providers run. So I think I've addressed all of that. If I missed anything, I'll let Tim answer any more questions or add in.
Yeah. On the force main issue, it was suggested that we had lost 500,000 gallons of sewage. That's not the case. This was a small leak that was on the south side of Gauze. We were notified about it on Friday evening. The gentleman from St. Luke's was putting out the fish fry signs and notified us that there was a leak. We went out and took a look at it, and there was some sewage bubbling up from the seam in the concrete panels on Gauze Boulevard. There was also further back in the right-of-way a little bit bubbling up by the light pole. All right. We contacted our contractor and asked him to come out on Saturday, which he did. When he got there, he called me and he said, "Tim, I don't see it leaking." He asked me if I wanted to proceed with digging. I said, yes, we need to try to figure out what's going on there. He dug a hole close to the cross gates to Gauze, and nothing came in the hole. So then he started further back in the right-of-way by the light pole. And
Reichert, I can hear you over here. Go ahead, please. Okay.
And he dug further back in the right-of-way by the light pole and did see it seeping in just a little bit there. But it wasn't a large stream. And he got concerned about the integrity of the light pole. He didn't want that light pole falling over. So we had to stop and coordinate with WST to come hold the pole while our contractor digs. It was the proper course. It was in the interest of safety, obviously. We began running our pump trucks. We turned off the Willowwood lift station. We turned off the Goldenwood lift station, which pumped through that force main under Gauze. And we began running our pump trucks. And they ran from our Willowwood lift station, and we deposited in the lift station over by the apartments closer to the treatment plant. And we continued running that pump truck for over a week, I believe. Well, we did.
Okay, sir.
Now, at some point, forgive me, let me look at my notes. Continued to run pump trucks. On Sunday, April 4th, we had not seen additional leakage or seep. The contractor had to backfill those holes in the interest of safety because he didn't want to leave them open all week. We continued to monitor that location to see if we saw any seepage of sewage. We did not. Since that first event, we did not see any additional seepage of sewage in that location. We continued to run those pump trucks until Sunday, April 4th is when we ceased running those pump trucks. Now, at that time, we actually turned the Willowwood lift station on Thursday, April 1st, but we continued to run the pump trucks until Saturday. We still did not see any seepage coming up. So on that Saturday, we ceased running the pump trucks, and the Willowwood lift station was continuing to pump through that force main under Gauze. We've monitored it continuously. We haven't seen any additional sewage leak at that location. With regard to the concern about the sewer entering the water system, to Gina's point, because of the positive pressure, if there were contaminants around the water system, around the water line, and you had a hole in that water line, as long as you maintain that positive pressure, those contaminants cannot get into that system. An example of that would be if you open your garden hose and you try to take dish soap and shove it into the garden hose when it's running, you're not going to be able to get it in there. You're not going to be able to get that soap to come out your kitchen sink because the positive pressure is the best defense against contaminants. Throughout this issue, we have not had a loss in pressure. We've maintained positive pressure the entire time for the duration. So the concern about sewer entering in the system, that didn't happen. We've had subsequent sampling. We've been sampling all along. The bacteriological samples that we took and the samples that LDH took came back negative. There were no positive bacteriological samples. And I think that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Mr. President?
Thank you. I'm going to go to the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Utility Committee, members of St. Tammany Parish Team Tammany, Tammany Utility, thank you all for being here. Gina Hayes, Chief Administrative Officer. I apologize for missing the first part of the meeting. I too was at a meeting that I'd made a commitment for before this meeting was expanded due to the nature of the case. So I did not hear the presentation, but I'm familiar with the presentation and didn't hear any other comments back and forth. I did hear those making a presentation, and I will acknowledge those. This utility committee meeting was originally called just to get an overview of the system. I do know that was a common practice in the previous administration on a regular basis, and because of COVID, of course, in the past year, that hasn't taken place. But I can assure you that I have been meeting with Tim, his staff, as I do with all department heads and departments, to get updates on their department, what their needs are, what their plans are in the future, and how they, and if they have challenges, or if they need funding that is not appropriated to them. So I do meet with them on a regular basis. I will note too that last week I met with Councilman Marino and Councilman Mike Smith, along with Gina Hayes and I. They asked that before this meeting we have a meeting to address some of the concerns that were brought up. I don't know if Councilman Smith had an opportunity yet to discuss that.
He has not.
Okay. So we did talk about that. We addressed concerns. I gave you some answers and commitments at that time, and we'll be happy to review that. But I also want to acknowledge the citizens that are here. Mr. Johnson, he did call me on Good Friday and we spoke. I did tell him that I would get answers, find out the details, and I did through Gina, who got all the details from Mr. Brown and explained to my satisfaction all of the steps that had been done. Then I realized that we're going to have this meeting. Mr. Wagisback, I did receive your email, and I do recall meeting both of you at a function a couple of years ago during the campaign. And Mr. Bender, thanks for keeping a copy of that flyer, because I keep copies of them. I keep copies of them too. And to your point, and to the point of that flyer, I agree. What was going on then cannot be tolerated and should not be tolerated by our citizens. And I'm staying up to that. What you saw on the slideshow were the expansions that are happening at the wastewater treatment plant, the lift stations, the Herwig Bluff water main replacement, and particularly with regard to funding, we are finding ways to fund these projects. and it may not just be our budget. It's grants, particularly for, and other funding for the water tower that will soon be in your area that will provide fire protection. You've got potable water now, and I don't know if you've got adequate fire protection based on the old systems that were put in. The water tower will give you the fire protection and the linking and the interconnecting of the water systems that are proposed will certainly benefit you on that. With regard to Mr. Belisario, thank you. I spoke several times to Mr. Belisario before taking office, former Councilman Belisario, and he was just as frustrated then as he was tonight during that time. He was still a councilman at the time, actually, before I took office. And, you know, I still feel his frustration and all of the other citizens' frustration.
I feel it too. I've been there 5 years doing it, Mike, so we all have it, so let's go.
Well, I mean, yes, and you've heard it over the past 5 years, and some of you have heard it longer than 5 years. I take this as a priority. I take this as a priority to upgrade our water systems, to upgrade our water treatment plant, to upgrade our lift stations. I believe there's only one last thing to do at the lift station at St. Luke Church, and that's to upgrade the control panel. Is there anything else we need to do there? I think we need to, you know, whatever we need to do to address that, so that particularly on Holy Week or any day, particularly on Sundays, that we don't have issues there. We know that issues are going to occur. And in our meeting, in my conference room last week, you know, we talked about the subject matter and the concerns that were out there. They're not going to be changed overnight, but I'm making a commitment that it is an urgency. And one of the concerns was maybe we need to have an evaluation by a third party, and I agreed to that. I said that's a great idea. Let's, you know, this past year, I'm not offering excuses. I can tell you, I don't offer excuses. But this is a priority, and the plans that I've seen of what is planned for this year, last year and this year, is telling me that somebody is planning to upgrade our system and using the money that we have available and money that we're getting from grants and other sources to upgrade these systems that were probably woefully inadequate when they were purchased. Okay, so we're going to make those changes. We're going to invest in that despite the other challenges we have. And I'm committing to that. And it's not just because we're having this meeting. This was always a priority. You know, we've met with other companies that wish to buy our systems or operate our systems. We're doing the due diligence during that time, but we're not going to hold off on making the investments in our system that we need to make. I made some changes to some of the departments last year through a restructuring. Planning and development, permits, engineering, public works, there were some changes and shifts. That was part of my reorganization plan, part of the commitment that I made when I ran for office, to streamline those departments, to streamline services to our citizens. But also at that time, I didn't make it public during that particular restructuring. And I've met with Tim Brown regarding this and Gina, and we've discussed this over time. The combined Environmental Services and Tammany Utilities under one umbrella. It's something that we're going to look at and determine how we can best put more concentration on Tammany Utilities and Environmental Services, and where they're working together and where they need not be working together, and identify how we can make changes to make Tammany Utilities more efficient, make Environmental Services more efficient, and that can be done in the future as well. With regard to the SCADA system, I don't have the details on that, but I do know, I hear it coming up. I'm familiar with the SCADA system. They were on our sewer lift stations in Covington when I served as mayor. And it's a great resource for notification of malfunctions and such at our sewer lift stations. We didn't have them on our water wells in our water system, because like here, we did not have high levels of chlorine in our municipal water system. But if we have funding available for the SCADA system, that was budgeted in prior years, I would urge that we do what it takes to do that if it makes sense to do so from an operations standpoint. And if that's something that we need to discuss. But I'm here to commit to the parish council, commit to our citizens that are here tonight, and those who may be at home listening or watching, that we take this serious. And we're going to make some changes, some short-term, some mid-term, and some long-term, to the benefit of all of our citizens, particularly in your neighborhoods, that I've heard this going on for so many years. And I'll take part of the blame for the last 15 months. I mean, there were some other things going on. There's nothing to say that this is not important and on the forefront. And together with Team Tammany and the rest of our St. Tammany Parish employees that work, whether it be procurement or human resources or finance, we're going to work with all of our Team Tammany to make the improvements sooner than later. And I've never come to the council and said we need more money for utilities. We've got money budgeted for the things we're doing. I'm not even asking for water rates. I would not even approve a water rate increase until we make the changes here to satisfy our citizens. So I'm here on behalf of Team Tammany and this administration to commit to the council, to commit to our citizens, that we're going to make the changes necessary that have been out there for the past 20 years or 15 years or 10 years. And I appreciate your support in that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
I want to say that I've got a closing statement, and I did meet with Gina Hayes and Lorena Cooper, and he has mentioned some of the things that I have in the closing statement, so I find that encouraging. I do have some questions I'd like to pose to Tim and a couple other people, and then a closing statement, if that would be okay. Okay, so I'm looking at the can you hear me?
Mike, you want to go last, or you want to
closing statement?
You want to go last, or you want to do your questions now?
I want to do the questions now.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay,
questions
Tim.
now. Okay, so I'm looking at the first. I got an email coming in about a sewage leak in Turtle Creek. Do we know anything about that? Is that?
I'm sorry, a current sewer leak right now?
That's what they were saying.
Oh, I'm not aware of anything right now.
Okay. And then second, the Willowwood should be wrapped up pretty soon, I think. It's maybe about tomorrow.
Yes, you're talking about the sewer force main?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah, they were able to pull the new HDPE pipe under Gauze and Cross Gates Boulevard today. So the conflict issue is done. There are no concerns about conflicts at this point. Tomorrow, they'll pressure test the line and make the tie-in to put it in service.
Okay. That's something that's been ongoing. I haven't been out there every day, but I've been out there pretty much every day. Either talking to the employees or when the employees weren't there, taking a look at what's going on. So I want to ask you a few questions along the timeline here. Okay. On the Sunday the 28th, I had some residents that called, and one that showed up at my house in the afternoon of Sunday. I spent a long time with one of them. And at some point, I gave you a call, and I think it was at that point you indicated that it was going to be a little longer than we thought. Okay. And we had been running pumper trucks, but pumper trucks had not been running that day. And I looked at the hole, the exploratory hole, and I'm a layman, and I'm sure a major sewage spill would be something like we saw in Metairie recently. And I'm familiar with some minor ones that we've had around Cross Gates. We've had a few water leaks as well, quite a few around the church. But it did seem to me that there was quite a bit of sewage that was going out. Okay, was not going into the street. Okay, on the phone, I expressed a concern that from the citizens that they thought a BWA was in order. You assured me it wasn't, because of the reasons that you mentioned, that cross-contamination was a very slight possibility. Okay, but I'm going to get into that later. So the pumper trucks, also, when I found out that this is going to be, when we all found out this was going to take longer than we expected at first, I asked if some publicity could be given that this leak was going to be longer being fixed. And I was told that we just don't usually do that. And I said, well, this maybe not, but this one is going to be of a longer duration, and it needs to go somewhere. It's got to be accounted for somewhere, because people see the pumper trucks and they want to know what's going on, which you agreed was a good idea, and that showed up on Wednesday. Okay. Now, I started getting questions about why the trucks stopped running, and I was told that that's because the force main was not, it was not operating, it wasn't putting out the extra sewage. Okay, so I want to go to recently when, we've got about 5 or 6 holes because you guys were probing around trying to find somewhere that you could dig. Now, gauze is a particular problem, I understand, because it's a nucleus for so many different lines. But we do seem to have this problem a lot where the lines are not mapped. Our schematics are not accurate that we have, and that's what we inherited from the other system. Okay, but it does seem to be something that reoccurs a lot. We get water mains broken 2 or 3 times sometimes when they're being fixed, or sewer lines that take longer because we don't have proper maps. I have asked about maybe using ground penetrating radar. That's just a layman asking a question. I don't know if it's practical or not. But getting back to the force main. Okay, so today I got a call while I was at school that they were pumping the water out of the holes and into the sewer, the storm sewer. Okay. And not into the trucks, not into the pumper trucks. Okay, and so I can see that you're saying that there was no sewage leak observed, so that would not have been necessary. Okay, but I know the holes had a lot of water in them because I went out there yesterday, which could have been rainwater. But my question is, when you decide that you're not, this is my question, I'm sorry it took so long, but when you decide that you're not going to pump fluid out of these holes, where there is a leak, or where you know there's been a leak, or in this case, because we had a lot of water in the holes, it had to be emptied before the contractor could start on the job. It says that this is observed. Are you guys doing any testing of that water to make sure that that's not sewage water?
No, so I assume that the pumping of the water out of the holes today was by the contractor to facilitate being able to do the
repairs.
work. That's right.
Okay, are they testing it?
No, sir. That water was not tested. I don't know if that was stormwater. I don't know which holes it was. If it was the hole on the other side of Cross Gates, away from the existing sewer force main, that would have been sewer water. Excuse me, that would have been rainwater.
Okay. Then, okay, so we don't really know. I mean, I know you haven't been out there today because we've had other things on our plate today, but what about the decision not to run the pumper trucks? I mean, are you sampling the water that's in the hole where the force main break is to make sure that there is no sewage in there?
Well, I'm not sure when the hole was present. When I thought that the contractor had backfilled the holes.
That's recent. That's before the pumper truck stopped running. Okay, that's within the last maybe 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, well, the holes were closed obviously for safety reasons, and we didn't see any kind of water accumulating coming up in the street or in the right-of-way. So there was nothing to pump at that point.
Well, I mean, not all the holes were closed. I mean, I know that. I went by every day because I live in New Cross Gates, just down the street. So I know some of the exploratory holes weren't closed, but those weren't in danger of sewage.
That's right.
It would have been just on one hole, right?
Right, the one
Okay.
closest to break.
Okay. All right, so I want to move on. I want to move on to the chlorine residual. Okay. Let's assume, I'm just going to assume for this line of questioning that there was no cross-contamination. Okay. And so there was no reason to do a BWA. Okay. The citizens that were concerned about this informed me that that several of them have been using hawk instrumentation to measure their water, and they found their chlorination levels were low. Okay. And I asked that you test, in particular, do some additional testing. The procedure is to test the well once a day, early in the morning. Is that accurate? Standard.
Right. The standard testing procedure for us is 3 locations a day, both wells and what we call the far point.
Okay. Okay. So I asked that to see, understanding that results obtained by citizens can vary, but we were getting reports from several citizens roughly the same thing. So I asked that we monitor 915 Cross Gates in particular every day, which you've done since then. I've gotten a report every day. Okay. And it turned out, and I checked every day to see if it was over 1 point. Okay, when LDH came out on the 1st, April the 1st?
Yes, the 1st.
Okay, they found that there was a variation, and that variation was at 915 Cross Gates, and there was one at Thatcher, a point on Thatcher, and a point in another area nearby where it wasn't nearly as low, but it was lower than the rest of the area. Okay, so at that point, we were cited, okay, by LDH, okay, for being out of compliance. Is that accurate?
Yes, a notice of violation for low residual at that location.
Okay. So the citizens were right. They were just possibly wrong about the cross-contamination. But they were right about the variance, okay? So it seems like, I mean, since you guys did an exploration and you thought that maybe a valve was stuck or it hadn't been opened properly, okay, So valves, every time you touch a valve, you have to document it, right?
Well, no, that is something that we're going to have to address in our SOPs on how we proceed forward with that, because I think there is definitely room for improvement in how we handle those valves.
Okay, so we don't really know, do we have an idea when the last time, before you went out, you guys went out to open the valve, when you discovered that that might be the problem, and you adjusted the valve? How long had it been, do you think, before the valve, when the valve had been adjusted before?
To my knowledge, it probably would have been a long time prior to that. I know that some of our folks talked to some of the residents there who very astutely were monitoring their water temperature, and they indicated to our folks that they had seen a change in the water temperature in the past week. I don't know if that's an indication that the valve had been manipulated sometime in the past week, or if it had been longer than that. I really can't pinpoint a date.
So we don't know how long the variance was going on exactly, or what the high and the low in the variance would have been.
In that particular location, that's correct.
Okay, okay. And if they hadn't reported it, we probably still, it might still, it's possible that we wouldn't have discovered it for a short period of time, possibly, or going until something else came up.
Yeah, the resident informing you of this, and you informing us of this, helped us identify that problem.
Okay.
And I would like just to point out that
Sure.
It wasn't, by all the sampling that we've done out there, it doesn't appear that was a constant issue. We would go out in the morning and we'd take a chlorine residual. That particular morning that LDH went out, we had a .93, I believe it was. Yes, a .93. When LDH went out, they observed it below the required .5. So, but earlier that morning, it was in compliance. So there was some fluctuation there, but it wasn't always out of compliance. And once we were alerted to this, we immediately began investigating, and the customer notifying indirectly through you to us helped us identify this problem.
Okay. The other observation is, like, some of these lower testing results seem to be going back towards the water well. Do you have any kind of?
Well, that would have been the dead end created by that closed valve.
Okay. Okay. Now, I want to move on to a couple other things, and then, okay, there was money appropriated for SL 1000s, and we're not always using those for tests. Okay, and you tell me why. So can you tell everybody else why we're not using those?
No, the SL 1000 is a more advanced meter that we use. It actually has chem keys for different whatever analytes or parameters that you want to run it for. As Mr. Wagasback indicated, those chem keys can get expensive. The DR900 meter is an acceptable meter for compliance testing. And so for our daily routine residual sampling, we use the DR900. This is written in our SOP that's been reviewed by LDH years ago when we had this prior issue. So for our daily routine sampling, we use the DR900. For our nitrification plan, which every chloramine system has to have, we utilize our SL 1000 to run it for ammonia, monochloramine, free chlorine, total chlorine, the whole gambit. So we use the SL 1000 when we use it for our nitrification plan monitoring.
Okay. I do want to go back. I'm sorry, I missed one. I missed one question. I want to go back to April the 1st and look at the 915 Crossgates residual. Okay, so at 6:40 a.m. it's 0.93. Okay, and that would have been right after you guys check the well and added chemicals to the well. Is that correct? If it needed to be chlorinated?
Well, the chlorination is continuous at the well sites.
Okay, so it's automatically done?
That's right. When the power, the pump kicks on for the well,
right,
the chlorine injection is automatic.
What do you don't happen to know what time that .05 reading was taken, do you?
I want to say it was, if memory serves, I think it was like 12 or 1 o'clock that afternoon.
That seems like a pretty steep drop, you know, in that short a period of time.
Mm.
But, and you think that's the valve?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. All right. I've got, there's some people, there's a couple of things I want to ask for informational purposes from some people in the audience. Okay, if they're willing to come up and ask some questions. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Okay, so if I could have one of the LDH guys come up. Well, I'd bring both. 2 for 1's a great deal. Okay. So you guys have been monitoring the Cross Gates water since the occurrence, and did you do the sanitation sweep today that y'all were going to do?
Well, first let me introduce myself, if that's okay.
Sure, I'm sorry. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
All right, John Williams, I'm the Deputy Chief of Field Operations. I cover half the state, which is the river parishes and the North Shore and Baton Rouge. So I've got a lot of systems. I have 2 district engineers under me. Jacob Hafner is one of them. So he covers the Baton Rouge area and the North Shore. And above me is Amanda Ames. She's the chief engineer who answers to Dr. Cantor, the health officer.
Okay. Okay. So did you do the sanitation sweep? Can you explain what that is?
Well, what we did today was a sanitary survey.
Okay, sanitary survey.
And a sanitary survey is an evaluation of a water system to see if it's in compliance with regulations, federal and state, and to ensure that the water is safe to drink.
And how often is that done?
3 years.
Okay, so this is our 3rd year in rotation.
It can be more frequently than that.
Okay.
And this sanitary survey that we did today was actually scheduled for next month, but because of what was happening and the concerns that were being raised, it seemed like a good time to push it up a month and get out there and do it.
And what do you guys, as far as the water system goes, what is it that you're testing for?
Well, we test for chlorine residuals. We want to make sure that the system is in compliance with the residual that it's permitted to be using. And so in this case for Cross Gates.
Could you speak up to the mic a little bit?
In this case, Cross Gates is a total chlorine system, which means it's a chloramine system, which is ammonia, and free chlorine produces monochloramine, but we don't use monochloramine for compliance. We use total chlorine. But since it's a chloramine system, we will look for monochloramine as well to see how efficiently it's being operated as a chloramine system. So we do that. There's other parameters that we could look for. pH, but we didn't do this on this trip. On this trip, we monitored for, which ones did you use? Free ammonia? All right, so it's the host of parameters that are for monochloramine systems: free ammonia, total chlorine, free chlorine, monochloramine. So, and we did that out in the distribution system at a few sites and at the point of entry.
Okay. Okay, so the water system covers like, oh God, let me think. Old Cross Gates, New Cross Gates, the landings, Turtle Creek. What am I missing, Tim? The landings, yeah. Okay, so that's right. So that's 6 subdivisions. So how many points along the line would you say that you guys checked?
Well, what we did was we went to both wells because that's where water is treated. And that's where the integrity of the wells are a big concern, because if you don't have the integrity of the wells, then you can get contamination. And like I said, treatment is there, so you want to ensure that the wells are operating as designed, that there's integrity, and that chemical is being dosed properly. And so those are the locations that we focus on. And then we will spot check out in the distribution system. But it's not going to be like a lot of sites. We don't go to all of the sites and look for chlorine residual during a sanitary survey. On a monthly basis, we are rotating through what we call total coliform residual sites. These are sites that, based on the population of the system, they have to have a certain number of these sites spread out across their system to represent it. And every month, we have sanitarians who go out, collect what's called bacteriological samples, bring them to the lab, and run them for total coliform, which is an indicator of waste from mammals getting into the water. If we find total coliform, we then look for E. coli, which is a measure of fecal contamination, human waste. So, but to your point, how many sites did we look at, Jacob?
Today we looked at 5 sites plus 2 wells.
We looked at 5 sites in the distribution system?
Yes.
And 2 wells.
Okay, and the results were, can you tell us what the results were?
I don't have them written down in the front of me, but I can tell you that they all looked good.
Okay.
There is a little bit of improvement that the water system could make at the point of treatment, but the water tests do look good.
At all the wells or just one of the wells?
Both
Okay.
of the wells.
So I'm gonna clarify on what looks good means, right?
Yes.
All right, so, there's looks good from a chlorine residual standpoint, like, are you meeting the minimum chlorine residual of 0.5? They met that, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's looks good from an operational standpoint, like, is your monochloramine and your total chlorine close, and how much free ammonia do you have? You don't want to have a lot of excess free ammonia. Did they look good for that?
Yes.
They did?
So,
Don't be afraid of the mic. Come on up to the mic.
I just don't want to go too deep into the water chemistry because it kind of is hard to explain without having charts and graphs and kind of show you where things are.
I probably wouldn't understand, but.
I think I can do it. So I would say that there's room for optimization. They have targets that they are trying to achieve. They don't want to have too much free ammonia. They want to have the total chlorine and the monochloramine being close together. And I think the spread on some of those, I think would be safe to say, is showing that they're not optimized, perhaps.
Yeah, their free ammonia was a
Hold up.
There you go. This is much better.
You use that mic, you use this mic.
All right. It's a sergeant at arms there.
Awesome. So so we went out and we tested their source last Monday and last Thursday, and then we tested it today. And what we found is that their free ammonia at their POEs was about a 0.3 or a 0.2. It should be closer to a 0.1. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that their water quality doesn't meet the state health code, but what it means is that there is room for them to do dosage calcs for their chlorine feed at their POEs to get their free ammonia lower to the levels that they should be at.
Okay. Okay, a couple of other questions. So at the end of the month, or whenever our monthly test is scheduled, do you happen to know when that is?
The last monthly test was on the 5th.
Of April?
Yes.
Okay,
Wasn't
and there wasn't any, I'm sorry, go
Yes,
ahead.
I wanted to talk about that. So
Okay.
on April 5th was the TCR collection. We collected some samples for back tees, and they came back absent for total coliform, which is great news. Everybody wants to have absent total coliform tests. But there was a lot of concern being raised by the residents about this break and the potential for cross-contamination. So, out of an abundance of caution, and above and beyond what we are required to do, we decided to go ahead and test every TCR in the distribution system, every one. And it was a Friday. I called up my staff and I said, go out there and grab samples from every single one. And they did. We called up the lab, and we said, you're going to work overtime on Saturday, and you're going to run these tests. And they did, and every single one came back absent for total coliform, which is a great thing. It's a great thing to not have total coliform present in your water. So, you know, that's what we did.
Okay. A couple other questions, and I'll let you guys sit down, but you mentioned that sometimes the wells become cross-contaminated. What circumstances do you usually find when a well's cross-contaminated?
All right, so we have an engineered system. We have a well and we have a distribution system. And they are engineered to minimize the potential for contamination. The well itself is, I don't know the exact depth, but it's probably over 1,500 feet down into an aquifer. And it's designed so where this aquifer is, that it's drawn from, is not affected by what's on the surface, unless there's a defect in the well casing. That happens when we find that. That's a violation, and it's, you know, that would be a significant deficiency. So the well is designed to not have surface water entering it. The aquifer itself, the recharge zone that's supplying water to it, is probably in northern Mississippi. I'd have to check, but it takes about maybe, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 years for the water to migrate down here. So that's your water source. And as long as the well and the seal and the casing is fine, you don't have contamination from the surface. We did the sanitary survey today. Typically, if there's a casing breach, there will be voids around the slab. Soil is finding its way in. You know, where did the soil go? It's going into the well. There's, you know, sediment ending up in people's drinking water because it gets into the system, gets pumped out. We've seen a lot of that. So there was no indication that there was a breach in the well. It seemed to be working fine. The second barrier for contamination getting into your system is pressure. You maintain a positive gradient out. As long as water is going out and you maintain that pressure gradient, it's not coming in. The third barrier is disinfection. So there's a multi-barrier approach to preventing contamination from affecting these sites. You know, multi-barrier in that if one fails, you have another one that is hopefully not failing in preventing contamination. So when we evaluate this system, there is a disinfection loss at some sites. That's actually not uncommon in chloramine systems, because chloramine systems can have some nitrification. It's also not uncommon for systems in general, because sometimes valves get shut, water gets dead, and when water is old, the chlorine residual has a shelf life like all of us. I've got 3 years, and I'm retiring, and that's my shelf life. So, but at the end of that shelf life, you know, this chlorine residual is gone. The issue here is that you've got to sleuth when you have a problem. You got to figure out what it is. You can focus in on one thing and say, that's it. But you might be missing what it really is. And so that's the hard part. When I walk into these issues, it might be cross-contamination. It might be a valve. It might be old dead water from somewhere. One thing that we did find on this survey is that the steel well is not run that frequently. If it's, you know, well, what did you find? Like every once a week maybe or something?
I think I heard twice a week.
I don't know, but here's the thing. So the steel well's got a hydromatic tank, and it sits there. If it's not being run, that water's going to get old, and then when it does run, you're going to have a slug of older water going out. Do I know that that's the exact reason why we lost residual? No. But to me, it's high on the list, along with the valve, high on the list. Cross-contamination between that sewer incident that was going on, that's not high on the list. And I'm sure that'll be argued with me, but I have 3 rounds of tests, one including every TCR in the system, all absent. So.
Okay.
No, sir.
2 more questions. Okay. can you characterize the worth of the SL1000s?
Yes, I'd love to. The SL1000 is a great machine. It is the machine you want to use when you are troubleshooting a problem and you need to get a bunch of parameters quick because it uses what I call a popsicle stick. You stick it in the back, you stick another one in the back. You can run four tests at one time. So you can get free ammonia, monochloramine, total chlorine, and free ammonia all at one time. One site, the numbers spit out, and you're good. The other test, the DR900, that's a great unit too. It runs more samples than the SL1000, but each sample is using a powder pillow. You drop it into a reagent bottle, you get a color, you stick it in there, maybe do a few other things, and you read that. But the important thing to note, the SL1000 and the pocket colorimeter are the same method. They look totally different. One's a popsicle stick and you're sticking it in, the other one you're shaking a powder, and you'd think they're totally different, but they're not. They're both colorimetric units using the same reagents and the same method. So,
Okay, can you kind of explain what a SCADA system is and what that would be used for in water wells?
sure, that's it's going to give your operators real-time data from monitoring what's happening at the well and reporting that.
Okay, so it's gonna, you can set it up to sample the water, or you can set, is it reporting on water pressure, or?
You could have an online instrument monitoring some parameter, be it pressure, temperature, chlorine residual, and you know, when the well's on and off, which they are already doing with data. Don't they have that now? Yeah.
I don't know yet, that's Tim.
Yeah.
The auto dialers.
Auto dialers, right. So they know when the wells are
power outage
kicking
or
off and on.
pressure.
But sure, you can automate your systems to report to you critical data real time so you know what's going on.
Okay. That's the only questions I had, unless somebody else up here wanted to ask a
Thank you.
question.
Thank you,
While
Ron.
you're up there.
I have one quick. Would you drink the water?
Yes, I would.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to drink it out of a bottle. That,
No. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Bender?
Well, Mr. Cannulet's going to go ahead of me, but while Mr. Williams is up here, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, from what Mr. Smith was asking. So, Mr. Williams, I do understand that you would drink the water.
Yes.
And therefore, I'm assuming that you will drink the water that the engineer,
That he
gentleman.
brought?
Excuse me?
That he brought?
Sure.
No.
So you don't believe him?
I don't drink anybody's bottled water that they show up here with. So
But
I'm not
everybody
gonna drink
here has to drink our water.
If
Wait.
I was at your tap, yes.
I understand. That's what I'm getting to, okay? I've read transcripts from previous conversations you've had with not residents, okay? You were not as nice as you are tonight.
Those transcripts I have heard, I heard them today, and they mischaracterize.
Your own words?
No, the series of events that occurred. They would like to be presented as if, listen to this, he did nothing. But in reality, if you listen to the transcript, and I'm complaining about a pool test kit, did you get written up?
We did.
He did.
Wait, I'm not putting this on you. You're misunderstanding. The system is designed that everyone, and I was received an email today, should believe Mr. Brown. Well, excuse me. You rolled your eyes at me.
No, I didn't. I'm trying to think
Well,
of
let me
where
ask
you're
a
headed.
question. Let me ask you a question. You, instead of being the expert that you are,
Yeah.
are not. And you live in New Crossgates. Okay? Now let's talk about reality. I've heard a lot of tests. Between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, which is not what you're testing today. You didn't test any contamination, cross-contamination, and I'm not saying there was. But for the record, you didn't test any cross-contamination between Palm Sunday and Good Friday, or at the latest Easter Sunday. Is that correct?
We did not do any back T testing. no,
I
sir.
understand. And let me just say this. So why do I get a lot of phone calls? Because a lot of these people used to live in my city council and parish council district, and they moved to Crossgates, new Crossgates. So my phone has been ringing off the hook for the last 10, 11 days. Now, with all of that, what do we know? What I know is that we have an awful lot of residents, and we don't even know the total number yet, that as humans have been suffering from diarrhea. We have animals that are throwing up. We have one gentleman who, and this is very rare in men, became so ill and lives very close to the front of Crossgates. Became so ill, he got sick and passed out and hit his own floor. The doctors determined that he had a urinary tract infection. Very, very uncommon in men. Like very uncommon, okay? And we have many, many people who have reported to me that they have skin problems, okay? And not only in a large scale during the week that I referred to, but even prior to that, but now even worse. We have so many people buying bottled water, not because they prefer Kentwood, but because they don't trust our water, okay? And you know, I look at this as we have an obligation called specific performance. We give them water and treat sewage, and they pay us. See, the problem is that we're talking lab tests and results and possibilities of cross-contamination. And I'm talking reality. People have had diarrhea, terrible. Pets are throwing up. We have people leaving their house to go to other facilities to bathe with their children still today. One gentleman who's at one of these sites called me yesterday. Said, Jerry, a former constituent of mine, said, Jerry, I said, do you drink bottled water? No. I said, so you drink the water? No. Well, what do you do? He goes, I boil water every day. I'm like, you boil the water for yourself every day? Yeah, for my wife and I boil water every day. How long has this been going on? Long time. He said, I boil it for 45 minutes. Even without a boil water advisory? Oh, yeah. Guy says to me, my skin is so bad. I've been to doctors. It's under my skin. And I'd have to go to specialists to find out what's going on. So I'm in with this. I know you're not a medical doctor, and neither am I. But you know what? This is not coincidence. There's something wrong. And I would ask you this. I know what the chlorine level is supposed to be at the well, because I've seen the reports. If that chlorine, if it shows up as 0 at one of the first houses coming out of it, what does that tell you?
You lost treatment.
Okay, and what does that mean?
It could mean a bunch of things. It could mean your bleach pump went out. It could mean that you ran out of bleach. Those are things that happen commonly. If you have a peristaltic pump, you could have an air bubble obstructing the bleach feed. These are things that have to be sleuthed.
But that's a problem.
If you don't have chlorine, yes, that's one of the multi-barrier approaches to preventing contamination.
Okay, so if I were to tell you that we have multiple residents here who live close to the very first spots, and they have 0 readings, would that be a concern?
It would be. And it's, it's incumbent upon the water system to ensure that that's not happening. And if it's happening, the first question I would ask is, which well is it happening at? And if it's happening at the steel well location, I would say perhaps they're getting slugs of water that is older and the residual has been depleted.
Yeah.
That's my guess. If it's at the Willowwood, well then, is it Willowwood? Willowwood. If it's the Willowwood, then, based off of what I saw today, that doesn't, I'd have to dig deeper. I don't know why that would be occurring.
Gotcha. But if the citizens aren't believed,
well, okay.
Wait, excuse me. If the citizens aren't believed with using high-quality equipment, which these people have invested in, then that's a problem in its own self. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and let me say this. I don't have another system in the state of Louisiana that I'm aware of that has as vigilant a neighborhood watch for water as Crossgates.
Right.
And not only that, they have taken the time to buy the equipment. They have the equipment, and I'll say also that they have spent a lot of time learning their water chemistry. They understand chloramination better than a lot of operators. So they're ahead of the curve on all of that. I would say the water system, I would hope that they would leverage that information. And likewise, I would hope that these customers are reporting every complaint. Because if they are finding issues and they're not reporting it to TU is not going to be responsive.
Oh, they're reporting them.
Okay. Well, there is a complaint log. And TU is required to maintain, and when we do our sanitary surveys, we pull this complaint log, and it helps us to know what's happening out in the system.
But before the meeting tonight, TU's belief is the water's safe. And we know that we have people in this room who are taking tests near the very entry points of chloramine or chlorine at a 2.25, 2.6 level of injection that's showing up very quickly at 0 or near 0, which means in the system, it's going to be 0 there too.
Well, so all I can speak to is the data that I have, and in particular, the data that my samplers collected. They went to every TCR site.
Today?
No. When we sampled every TCR site for back tees.
That was when?
That was on the
Friday of last week.
Friday of last week. Yeah, Friday of last week, because the lab worked
The 4th.
overtime. Yes.
The 9th.
The 9th. The 9th.
And all of what they've described was finished by the 9th.
I guess it was. If that, we don't have that data. We had one chlorine residual that was.
And that's fair enough.
You
That's fair enough. I have another question for Mr. Bender. God, it's difficult for me to call him Mr. Bender.
So, you're done?
Yes, I'm done for the time being. Excuse me, Mr. Bender. Oh, and I want to thank y'all.
Come on up.
David. So let me just make it clear. I know my colleagues know this. David is my oldest son. My daughter, Angela, who's my oldest daughter, lived in Willowwood. They saved their money. They wanted to move into New Crossgates, and they moved into New Crossgates about 1.5 years ago. They live on a teacher salary, and they buy bottled water exclusively because they have 5 children. Of the people in my family, that's 7 grandchildren, a son, a daughter-in-law, and a son-in-law. I have a daughter-in-law sick. I have my oldest grandson sick for over a week. with all of the same kind of symptoms that you all are talking about. David, I have a question. I know that you had talked to me at some point in the last day or so about this valve issue. Do you have a comment on that or anything else that you've heard?
I mean, as far as I have a number of comments. As far as the valve itself, where is the valve
Get
physically
closer to
located?
the microphone, please.
As far as the valve itself, Tim, where is the valve physically located?
It's on the south side, it would be on that'd be the southeast corner of the intersection.
Okay. So I'm going to correct a few things. So Tim mentioned that, so Mr. Williams, a number of the things Mr. Williams.
Jerry, excuse me, is he answering your questions? or
Yeah,
is
he's
he
answering my
questions.
questions.
Okay.
A number of the things Mr. Williams said are accurate in that we were aware that the Steel Road well was not functioning the way it should be. However, again, we measure our water temperatures. So we know when Willowwood has a thermal effect, Steel's cold water, okay? Through this entire event, my water was always 93 degrees because I'm coming straight out of the Willowwood well. I get the freshest water of all of Crossgates every day of my life, straight out of the Willowwood wellhead, okay? It's at 93 degrees. If you go over by Neil's house, it's about 78 degrees, okay? He tends to get a mixture of both Steel and Willowwood. So Mr. Williams is correct. They do have dead water that comes out of Steel. It is much colder water. It's not applicable to anything that was occurring here, okay? For 6 days, coming straight out of the Willowwood wellhead at 93 degrees, 3 times a day for 6 days, I had 0 residuals, okay? Now, we think the operators on the ground are good guys. They tell us the truth on the ground. They reported the truth to one of my neighbors the entire week. It's that when we then read the page, like this page that I'm reading here where it's like a timeline, I guess Mr. Brown put together, none of the information is honest in comparison to what was actually occurring on the ground those days. So we've got the operators telling us the truth, and we have other information that shows up on this page that's just not accurate. I even listened to what Ms. Hayes says, and I can tell in her heart she's trying to be honest based on the information she was given, and I can tell the information she's given is dishonest, okay? Chloramines, for one thing, are odorless. You cannot smell them, ever. They're odorless. So there's just a number of things you said where I know you're not trying to mislead us purposely. We do know water chemistry. Mr. Williams just said we know it better than the operators. I have 2 college degrees. Neil has 2 college degrees. We have a lot of people on our team that are very educated. We know our water chemistry. It's not that we want to know our water chemistry, but we're trying to have safe water. It's almost impossible at this point. There's a lot of people sick in the neighborhood. And I'll give you the answer to my dad's question on page, after you go through the brochure that I loved when Mr. Cooper first put it together, and then you've got my 2 pages of my speech. The 3rd page I've got circled, and it says a chloramine residual target of 2 to 3 parts per million at entry point to the distribution system. That's what you want in the recommended chloramine guidelines. And then you want to also have greater than 1.5 in the distribution system to prevent nitrification. When Jacob and Mr. Williams came 3 days ago, Friday, April 9th, they tested about 20 TCRs roughly. 17 of them were below 1.5. 17 of them, okay? If you go to the next page and I show what the Crossgates water system looked, I just picked a random date. It was March 19, 2018. Greg Gordon used to actually give us transparent test results. When Tim took over, they all went off the website, so they're not transparent anymore. But on this day, Greg gave us this, March 19, 2018. It shows what it looks like on a normal day. And if you go down the column, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's about 20 numbers, except for a 1.73 and a 1.81, which could be further out in the distribution. The other 18 numbers are above 2.0 parts per million, okay? When LDH came, when Jacob came on April the 1st, Thursday, at 915 Crossgates Boulevard, which y'all need to understand, this is not like a side street. This is the trunk line that runs in front of Gene Bellisario's house. It is the main water feed straight off the Willowwood well. Jacob Hafner's guys found 0.05, okay? Then they tested 3 other sites further down by Mr. Jean. They got 0.83, 0.71, and 0.71. The 4 samples they took in that area that we kept saying, the residual's gone, the residual's gone, the residual's gone, those 4 samples all came up as anomalies, basically. A 0 plus 3 others. Now, you have to understand, there's only certain places they can test on the trunk line. It's one trunk line feeding everything. So we were testing all kind of other houses in that vicinity. They were all 0 also. That went on for 6 days. We know the operators were seeing it because they were reporting it to us on the ground. And this log of these results that I guess Tim has put together, they're just dishonest. I don't know how else to address it other than that, you know. I know my friend Steve knows Todd. He talks highly of Todd. And from what I know, Todd's operators were reporting to us accurate information. It wasn't making it to it was being changed at the top is what I see today when I look at these residuals because they're absurd. So as far as the valve goes, I could speak for days on the valve. Basically what Tim is trying to say is that this mysterious valve was valved off that caused all the water coming out of Willowwood at 93 degrees to go down East Gauze Boulevard, north up Military, and then come in the back side of Crossgates to where we live in the front of New Crossgates, we were the dead end. You heard Tim say the dead end, okay? That's completely false, okay? You're not gonna have 93-degree water make a full loop all the way around. I think Mr. Williams could support that. We weren't the dead end. We're never the dead end. There is no closed valve, okay? When Jacob tested the wellhead on April the 1st, so we only have one, because TU took no bacteriological samples between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, and because LDH took no bacteriological samples between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, it's our word against Tim's. So the only mediator in it is that LDH did come on that April 1st, Holy Thursday. They did find 0.05 like we said they were going to find, okay? They come in a random time. It's not like anybody can shift anything. They found it, okay? So the evidence is on our side that something was wrong with the water. The other problem is that we were getting calls from people saying they were sick, okay? I had 2 people in my house with documented sicknesses. It's medically documented, okay? My neighbor, Dennis Barry, who apparently has told me he's known you for 20 years, okay? Him and I come on the same 3/4-inch line at the meter. I get his water, he gets mine. His cat's throwing up. He's telling me his ice smells like sewer, okay? I go around the block. This guy, Butch, walks out his house and tells me that his wife went to drink the water and it smells like sewer, told him to throw it out. I don't want to talk about his business unless he gives me permission, but do I have permission? So Mr. Gattuso, he lives on the first right on Waverly, fairly close to me. His dogs were throwing up. He had diarrhea and he had the skin rash, okay? I can go through a dozen more examples, okay? These are just people I know, people who are trying to contact me to say, David, there's something wrong with the water. All I can do is tell them the truth. There's a sewer spill and there's also no disinfectant in the water, and that's all I can do.
Listen, Chairman Lorena, I appreciate the time you've given them.
Thank you.
And
Thank
listen,
you, Chairman.
thank you for your comments. I do want to say this right now real quick, Mr. Chairman, and you can take it over back to Chris. I want to say this, and I think I say this, and in fairness, I'm just going to say, I think people that know me know that I try to be fair. What I've heard today, and I knew some of it, I will say this. And Ms. Gina, as I told you in the beginning, I've never had an issue, okay? But let me tell you something. I'm starting to believe that you're a victim here too. Because I'll be honest with you, I do not believe anything from Greg Gordon or Tim Brown in the... in the 2 or 3 years that we formed our work group, and the members who have been at it a while, Rikert's here now, Mr. Lorino, myself, Chris, okay? And now we've added, and Gene was on it, okay? And Mr. Groby, a former council member, who's an expert on water. We fought a hard battle over a long period of time, Mr. President. It went from no preventative maintenance ongoing, okay? No upkeep of a system. It just went on and on and on. And we're seeing now a reflection of this too. And Mr. President, I'm not trying to be sympathetic to you, but I'm going to say this. I do believe that you're going to take this problem on now that you've heard both sides. Ms. Jean, I'm sorry you haven't heard both sides, okay? You only know what you're told, and I understand that. But Mr. President, my last point, this is how we campaign, but it's different the way we need to govern. So I ask for your help. Thank you.
And Mr. Bender, thank you. And I did state that when I was at the microphone.
I know you did.
That I was going to address this.
I know you did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Canulet?
Thank you. All right, Tim, I got a couple questions for you. All right, I want to talk about the sewer leak. When was it first reported to us, the day that the leak was?
To us. Who's us?
To Tammany's Utilities.
That was Friday before Easter.
Okay. And when did we get the leak actually stopped? When did it actually stop leaking?
Well, the actual leak, the observation of an actual leak stopped the next day. Now, where the water was going, if it was just filtering into the soil, we don't know.
Okay, so I got some more questions for this.
Sure.
So when you report this in, you call this into the state, you got to give them a time and a location.
That's right.
And the type of material, correct?
That's correct.
And the incident should stay open with the state until the leak is stopped. Is that correct?
The way this is handled is we report it to DEQ with our discharge monitoring reports, our monthly discharge monitoring reports. Now, I also emailed DEQ to let them know in advance of that spill report going in with our DMRs that this break had occurred.
Right. Okay, so what you're telling me is all y'all are required to do is to report it to the DEQ. We're not responsible for an amount and a stop time of the leak. Is that what y'all are telling me? Is that correct?
On the spill report, they would like for us to put a spill amount, but in this case, we didn't know, so we have to put unknown.
So we do have engineers. So you found a leak. Y'all ended up finding a leak, correct? You
Yes,
did
sir.
find a bad pipe, right? The crack or whatever it is, the crack?
Well, yeah.
The leak. We found the leak.
There's a leak, yes.
Okay, we found the leak. Did we actually visually see the leak?
No, sir. Well, we saw it coming to the surface.
But we
on
never
the
saw
Friday.
it. We never saw it in the pipe.
No, the sewer force main that runs under gauze is in conduit, so the leak was seeping from the conduit. Where the leak was actually in the force main, we don't know. It may have been all the way under gauze and just traveling back through the conduit.
Okay. So did we clean the residual soil?
The soil was excavated.
So we removed it?
Well, no, I mean, it was excavated during the exploratory digs to try to find it.
The
So
areas where
it was mixed in with the soil.
Okay, so the areas where we found sewage, was the soil remediated, removed, replaced? What was done?
No, sir, that's not the standard procedure for those spills.
It's not?
No, sir. We apply lime, but soil is not replaced.
Okay. So, lucky for us, all of us here, I retired April 1st, and I got a sewer background from the refinery. So, I'm gonna make a request. I need a job. I'd like to come work with y'all for a few days. I'll sign any paper you want. I got my own work boots. I got my gloves. I got my shovel. Got a hard hat. I got everything we need. I would like to come just kind of ride around and just try to get a better grasp of exactly what's going on from a different set of views, because I have some issues. And one of the issues is when we met with this, we were very clear about procedures, how we had none, and how we wanted them, which you were still here at the time. That was mentioned, and we wanted procedures, and we don't have procedures still. It doesn't sound, you have state procedures, but the kind of procedure I'm talking about is when we take a piece of equipment out, what valves are closed, what valves are open, what steps do we follow? Are they signed off? Are they time dated? That whole, just like we do in a refinery, just like we do in the oil companies, in all the big company, any other big company in the world. They have procedures that you follow and you have to fill out. We asked for those. We asked y'all 2 years, was it 2, 3?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, 3 years ago. Haven't seen any.
Well, no, we presented that. We presented that, the standard operating procedures.
Let me rephrase it. So, every piece of equipment you work on, coming from the oil back, coming from the refinery, everything we work on, we are required to have a written procedure. Everything. I heard y'all say that we don't. We're not sure what valve was opened or why or when or where. That is a problem. So I definitely want to see us start working towards getting some procedures in place. And these procedures protect you, and they protect the public. This is not here to pick on anybody. This is written documentation that we can take, that you can take and show that this was done. So I would love to see some of this. And some of the other things is I'm really not sure why we don't remediate big leaks, but I think we should definitely look into remediating them. And if we're not, we need to know why we're not, because, you got the contamination, you got the water, right? You got the soil, you're digging holes. Well, if you didn't remediate none of this, wherever you told me, I heard it was coming out of the panel on Gauls Boulevard, that's correct?
Yeah.
When the first leak was found?
Yeah, I wouldn't characterize this as a big leak. This was sewer seeping up out of the ground. It wasn't a geyser. It wasn't. You couldn't even see it bubbling. It was seeping up. Now, on Friday after we had that heavy rain on Friday, I don't know if the soil conditions, the saturation of the soil, contributed to allow it to come up more. But there was probably a half-inch bubbling up from the seam in the concrete.
Okay. All right. I will say this. I know people don't want to hear this, but as long as you have pressure on your water system, you should never have cross-contamination. The only way you should have contamination of a well is, like the gentleman was saying, it's got to be coming out of the actual aquifer or the casing is busted. But we could have something else. It could be sulfur. It could be any other type of chemical or some type of component that's just horrible. For the fire protection, just so you know, Mike, Fire District 1's got a pretty good rating in that area, but the tower's definitely needed, and it's going to help 100%.
That's what I meant by that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just
an elevated water tower will absolutely help that.
Just clarifying that. I just don't want people to think that they don't have sufficient coverage.
Right. Very good. Good
they
point.
have very, very good coverage. And so I'm assuming the vacuum trucks were always discharging into the sewer system, and it never was deposited into the effluent systems, correct?
No, it was taken to another lift station and dumped into the lift station, which then pumped it to the treatment plant.
Okay. All right. So in them discussions we had years ago, I got to really give a lot of thanks and credit to Jake. Jake was really big on that, and we purchased all this equipment. And I understand what the gentleman from the water for the state is saying, but it makes no sense why we're not using it all the time. We purchased it, there's a reason. We purchased it to try to keep up with that. And the last thing I'm gonna leave you with is this. We need to see if we can find some type of equipment or some type of instrumentation that will be able to monitor the temperatures and the flows and the pressures all the time on the far ends of this water system. The steel well thing is really interesting. I think y'all might have hit on a little bit there with the putting water that's been just sitting up there for days and days. But I also do know this, chlorine, when you hit it with heat, it don't last. It zaps, it goes away. We used to use them in towers all the time on the refinery. Don't worry, we had to use bleach. 2 reasons: it's safer, and bleach is much more efficient. It doesn't flash off quite such a bad thing. But 93-degree well temperature, to me, is a concern.
Can I address that also?
You sure can.
To Mr. Bender, the Steel Road water, the natural water, is about 97, 98 degrees.
Yes, probably because it's heated up from the center tank, right?
So Tim, would you?
I'm sorry, that's coming out of the ground.
Mr. Bender, please sit down.
Yeah.
That's coming out of the ground.
Okay, and then the other well, Willowwood, they said it's about 83, 87, something like that?
I believe it's higher than that. About 92.
About 92 also? Okay. All right. And do we have any historical data giving us the temperatures of those 2 wells over the last 10, 12 years? Or is this going to be a guess?
We may have some historical data on that. We can look.
We definitely need to look, because if it's coming out much hotter now, some things are going to need to be modified. Oh, let's see. All right. So after hearing all this and seeing all this, I have some real concerns. One of my big concerns is what we talked about 3 years ago evidently did not get put into place. And that really perturbs me to take all that time and effort and even buy equipment and we not do it. That's got to change. That's got to change. As far as, like I told you, I'm off, I'm free. I know how to write procedures. 37 years. I can do that, but if y'all don't mind, I would definitely like to take a ride with some of you guys and just kind of get a touch and a feel of what's going on, just for my personal satisfaction. But these people aren't making this up. There's something definitely going on with this system. I don't know whether it's the existing pipes or a well or what, but it's real. And that's it, man.
Okay.
Thank y'all. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, can I address that a little bit? The only notification that we received about low chlorine residuals was from Mr. Smith. I would encourage y'all, because y'all, like Mr. Williams said, y'all have educated yourselves on this. Y'all have the equipment. If y'all see something wrong, please call us and let us know so that we can come out and corroborate what you're seeing, and work and be more transparent with y'all about what we're seeing. I'd like to open those lines of communication with y'all because we're not trying to hide anything from the public. All right, I'm a family man. I have children. I don't want anything to happen to my children, and I would never knowingly put any of you or your families in jeopardy. I would never do that. that's not part of my makeup to be that callous. I feel, Mr. Wagisback, I feel for the struggles you've had with your family. We have to add chlorine to the system. We're required to. But I want y'all to know that I'm happy to work with y'all. I don't think we need to be at odds with one another on this. Please let us know what you're seeing and when y'all do your tests. Please let us know so that we can come out and investigate it.
Okay. All right, Tim, it goes to the same way. Address the council, please, okay?
Yes, sir, sorry. No, that's all I had to say.
Okay. And Mr. Davis?
Yes, just, could I have one of the individuals from Crossgates get up here who said they were getting sick and everything and had diarrhea, or their dogs? I just have a question to ask them.
Not necessarily Crossgates, but
Okay, but has this happened before, or did this sickness or whatever ever happen before this incident that
Yes.
just happened?
Yes.
Okay, so as an engineer and environmental health and safety officer, you always go from the end back. That's just how you fix problems. So maybe we need to test everybody's house in these areas first. Work backwards and see if it's coming out of one truncated line. That's the problem that's coming to be. Now, obviously, there may be some issues with the way we manage our business, as far as, are we doing lockout, tag out when we open and close valves? These are very important. I'm like Mr. King-Gillette. I worked in the oil business for 21 years. We had SOPs for everything. We had a standard operating procedure for every single thing we did in the field. And that's what has to happen either here, or I'm concerned now you're telling me you were getting sick before all this happened.
yes, 2017 and 2018.
So now I'm thinking, okay, now
Because
what?
It's well documented that at that time, we were getting hit with over 8 parts per million of chlorine in the system.
Okay,
But the LDA, and I apologize, I'm an engineer as well.
Yeah.
So I speak your language. It's baffling to me, and maybe somebody here is smarter than me and can explain it. The well, the distance between the well and Mr. Leach's house at 915 Crossgates is about 2 city blocks. They're off a direct line, straight off the well. It's a force main that runs down to Mr. Jean's house, it runs down to Mike Smith's house. So we're saying that within 1,000 feet of the well, we have Mr. Leach's house, we have Mr. Binder's house, that all have 0 chlorine, and it's documented that it's going in at 2.7 parts per million at the well. So the only variable here that could possibly be eating up the residual is we got a well, we got a massive sewer break. I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but we measured the tanker trucks. We measured how frequently they were running per hour. We knew that they had 500 gallons per trip. They were making 6 trips an hour, and they didn't run for about 8 days. And LDH cited you recently for pumping through the breach. Where was that sewer going? You're knowingly pumping sewer through a line that you know is broken. Okay. Do the math. It's 36,000 gallons a day just by the pumper truck that was running for that 24-hour period.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wagerspat. Appreciate it. Jimmy?
Yes, from that point, just learning that, and especially being in the oil field business, we used to pressure test the casing all the time just to make sure there's no leaks and everything. And it sounds like we need to be doing the same thing for the people's water supply as well. Somebody needs to go in there and start doing pressure tests to make sure there is no leak, and then if there is a leak, fix it.
St. Tammany's
Thank
owned
you.
the system since 2003.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
When was the last time you
Mike?
tested the well casing?
Mike?
And had them inspected?
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's a closing statement for me. When I ran, I thought we should sell the utility company. I don't think we do a real good job managing it. That's just a general statement for a long time. Okay, I don't think we have the resources and the money, and we're not big enough to do it. I think it has to be somebody on the private end. So I was for selling it or subcontracting it out. And I know that we're exploring that. I know the administration is exploring that path. That's one path they're exploring. But until that happens, we have to manage it as well as we can. So there's no argument from anyone that Tammany Utilities in District 9 is a rapidly aging and crumbling system, making modernization and replacement of infrastructure critical, and repairs to the existing system frequent and challenging. Compounding these problems were deficiencies in management under the last director of TU, which caused a widespread loss of confidence and suspicion of TU's operation in general. The discharge of Mr. Gordon as director and promotion of Tim Brown to be the new director. Although some progress has been made in modernizing the system, such as a larger and better trained staff, and long-term plans have begun to be made, such as replacement of a 1970s era treatment plant, day-to-day operations continue to present many of the same persistent challenges, such as the events around the blown sewage line near the Willowwood water well discussed at length in this meeting. I have had discussions with the administration about these issues and am gratified that they're not opposed to hiring an outside entity or expert to audit and analyze operations at TU and to resume the practice at TU. I expect that, of course, that report will be made public and ask that the whoever does the audit report to the council. The administration seemed amenable to resuming the practice of posting routine or special sampling results of water in the TU system on their website daily, in addition to the graph that they're putting out. I would also urge the administration to have TU complete the process of removing manual alarms on all lift stations and replace them with auto dialers to alert TU of failures as rapidly as possible. I would further urge the use of the SO1000 water analysis system already paid by the parish to test for a variety of elements such as chlorine, ammonia, pH levels, etc. I would urge that SCADA electronic analysis and reporting devices be installed on wells so real-time information on their operations can be accessed 24/7 wirelessly. This is something money was directed towards from the last administration, but the SCADA packs were not installed. Lastly, it's clear to me from my discussions with my constituents, who are the customers of TU, of which I am one, that they continue to have a low level of confidence in TU operations and equate current operations as little different from those under the past administration. Other than commissioning a consultant's report, what is the best way to restore constituents' confidence? President Cooper, after being elected, formed an advisory committee which issued a report setting goals for his first 200 days in office. I believe one of those recommendations was to make the director of TU separate from the director of environmental services. Currently, they are one and the same, which means the director of TU is serving as his own superior and evaluator. The two should be two separate positions, separated as recommended, and a new director brought in with no connection to the prior TU directors to run TU. If the administration retains Mr. Brown as Director of Environmental Services, his knowledge of the TU system would be of great aid to whoever is brought in to be the new director of TU. I believe this would go a long way to restoring faith in the TU system by the public and show the parish is indeed committed to operating and improving TU for the benefit of those citizens. Maintaining the current status quo would send the opposite message.
Thank you, Mike. I don't see anyone else, so I'm going to close. I have a couple of things. There is a major problem. these residents would not be here with the same type of issues, whether it's children, animals, whatever the case may be. There is a problem. Now, is it all under one individual? I don't think so. I think it's a problem that we need to figure out. And yes, some of the things that Mike said, a lot of people are not on President Cooper's watch, but they're the same thing that we did say to the past administration. Separate heads, equipment, documentation. But we have to figure a way to do this. This cannot go on another day. It can't. It can't. We have to figure something out, President Cooper. And whether it's, as we discussed, as you said, and we did, selling Tammany Utilities, which I'll say it right now, I said it before, I'll say it in public. I don't know why we bought it to start off with, but that's before I was born. But anyway. But the bottom dollar is we should have never bought it, but we have it. And if you're going to have it, I'm really embarrassed that people have to buy bottled water today. I'm frankly embarrassed, okay? I really am. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. We buy Kentwood water, but not because we have to. We have to do something about this. So we're going to meet. We're going to meet President Cooper once a month. I'm going to pick a day. And this committee is going to hold you to what you said. We're going to hold ourselves to what I just said. And we're going to hold Tammany Utilities to come to that podium and tell us every single month what has been done, where are we going, and what are we doing. And more importantly, the residents of Crossgates need to have special attention, and I expect a report from them every single month. And I'm going to disagree, Tim. It's not their responsibility to have a machine to check water and tell us what's going on. It is our responsibility to do that, okay? And that's what I want to have happen. I believe we need to look at selling. I believe we need to look at somebody coming in and running it. I believe we need to look at what's going on in Tammany Utilities. And we need to make sure that this gets corrected here and it doesn't spread somewhere else. And I'm going to be fully committed to that. We're going to be here every single month. And the very first time that I hear everything is fine and nothing's happening, I'm not going to be a happy camper. So I'm going to close with that, President Cooper. Yes, you can, but let's make it very short.
Well, thank you. And
Okay.
I just want to assure members of the council, members of the public, that as I said at the podium earlier, I am committed. I am committed to making impactful corrections that we've talked about tonight. I'm committed to making improvements to our water system, particularly the deficiencies that we've been experiencing over the past 20 years or 15 years, whenever the system was bought. We're committed to doing so. And I give you those assurances, and I thank you again for meeting and bringing up these issues, but we're committed to do so. And I thank our citizens for coming and bringing this to our attention. And I'm going to evaluate what we've had from tonight, as well as the information I have from our administrative, Tammany Utilities, and evaluate all of the information that's been given to us and make the improvements. You can count on it.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Once again, I'm sorry for the water system, but we'll work on it. I know you heard it before, but we're going to get it done. Meeting adjourned. Yes, sir.
I'll take all of them.